Chapter 1189. The two quickly entered Qian Er's house. Perhaps it was because of Chang Zhao's death. The debt collectors hadn't appeared in the past 2 days. Qian Er was a bit arrogant. His house was in a mess. When Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao arrived, this guy was still sleeping on the sofa. But this also made it easier for the two. Wei Zidao first took a metal bar and poked it all over Qian Er's body. "Brother Hao, there's no abnormal energy reaction. It seems that he's not a metahuman. You can do it," Lu Mingho said casually, then moved a chair, covered his nose with a tissue, and sat down. Wei Zidao nodded and came to the front of Qian Er. He stretched out his hand to pinch a strange seal, muttered some words, and then touched Qian Er's forehead. This was some kind of small Taoist technique. The effect was similar to hypnosis. Of course, the effect of hypnosis varied from person to person, and also from caster to caster. In school, Wei Zidao's grades in this field were very outstanding, so he graduated early and was officially promoted to an agent who could go out on duty. Under the effect of practical Taoist magic, Qian Er slowly opened his eyes, but his expression was dull and his consciousness was unclear. Lu Mingho began to ask some questions about what happened that night. What Qian Er said was basically the same as what several of Chang Zhao's companions gave to the police. Just when Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao thought that they wouldn't have any good luck this time, Qian Er's words showed some things that weren't recorded in the case. "Gun?" Lu Mingho frowned at this time. "What gun? Who gave you the gun?" Qian Er's eyes were empty, but his words were clear. "A silver gun. I couldn't see his face. He said he could help me kill Chang Shao, so I shot." "What about the gun?" Wei Zidao quickly asked. Qian Er slowly shook his head. "I don't know." Lu Mingho stared at Qian Er for a long time, then waved his hand. Wei Zidao cast another spell at this time, and Qian Er fell on the sofa and fell into a deep sleep. "Brother Hao, now there's a clue." Wei Zidao pondered and said, "The victims in the detention center, including Chang Shao, were all shot in the forehead, and no bullets could be found. But Qian Er said that someone gave him a silver gun." Lu Mingho nodded. "This gun is very likely to be a specially refined artifact. Perhaps this is the only way to explain its strange method of killing. But why didn't the mastermind do it himself? Why did he choose to give the gun to Qian Er? Then, was it a similar operation that time in the detention center?" Wei Zidao walked back and forth. He thought of something. If the murderer did it himself, he wouldn't have left Qian Er, a flaw that ordinary people can't find. And I'm afraid we still have no clue. But the murderer did this. Is it because the murderer can't use this gun directly? Or rather, using this gun requires certain conditions. Lu Mingho's mind raced madly. In fact, it's very likely that he's doing something, like an experiment? If this is an experiment, then it is very likely that there will be another victim. Wei Zidao suddenly reacted. "Brother Hao, if this is the case, then it's too dangerous. Don't panic. This is just our guess." Lu Mingho shook his head. "If it's really a gun that shoots a bullet to kill people, and the bullet disappears automatically after killing people, then this gun is not an ordinary artifact. Think about it, not to mention the cell in the detention center, just Chang Shao. The car is sealed. It can only be said that the bullet suddenly appeared in front of him and killed him head-on. Think about it, this kind of method that ignores space, among the many Taoist methods that we have learned, is there anything similar?" Wei Zidao thought and said, "I heard that some powerful cultivators can use a kind of Taoist method that can teleport people thousands of miles in an instant. And many Taoist sects also have the escape method that can pass through walls. Passing through walls is only suitable for energy bodies like ghosts. Normal people, even Taoists or demons, can't do it. In this regard, the development department has done countless tests. It can only be said that this artifact can generate energy similar to bullets within a specified range. After killing people, the energy will disappear, and so will the bullet." Lu Mingho shook his head. "It's not impossible to tear through space, but the energy required is too strong. Even the center of a nuclear bomb explosion doesn't have this ability. It's not that the energy is not enough, but that our method of using energy is still very low level. Wei Zidao said, I've heard Dr. Zhao's lecture. He mentioned that with the current methods of human beings, they are still lacking in the method of using energy. As for Taoist demons, they are more advanced than us, but it may not be the end. Lu Minghe waved his hand. Let's not talk about this. We only need to know that someone gave the gun to Qian, and this person appeared in the alley. In this way, we are not completely clueless. Let's go to that alley. Luoqiu was quite satisfied with the optimized world in the game. But he didn't stay for too long. It was just an excursion. He didn't even look for the main god who was having fun in the castle. Luoya was still the same. When she went in, she was unfamiliar with everything, and when she came out, she was still unfamiliar with everything. Only when she was by Luoqiu's side did she reveal a secretly relieved expression. Luoqiu didn't leave Luoya's room until she slowly fell asleep. Master, are you going home? Miss Maid appeared beside Luoqiu and asked softly. This didn't seem to be different from the past. At that time, Luoqiu would come up early and go home to rest after dinner. It was the same regardless of rain or shine. Okay, see you tomorrow. Luoqiu nodded with a smile. Yu Yi liked this answer because tomorrow was very fast for her. In the long years, such a short wait was nothing more than a small hibernation. She was born in the club. Now, 300 years had passed and she had experienced 2 bosses. The new boss made her gradually recover from some kind of coldness. Naturally, she wanted to cherish her current master more from the bottom of her heart. She was even more unwilling to have a new master to replace him in the future. She only needed to close her eyes gently and wait for one night to see him again. What else was there to hope for? She didn't even feel strange. She didn't have such a strong idea in the past, but now she had such an idea. She just felt good, as if she had broken through some shackles in the dark and obtained some kind of permission. Luoqiu was also curious. He felt that his Miss Maid seemed to have a touch of smoke and fire. In Luoqiu's eyes, at this time, Miss Maid, without the body of an alchemy puppet, became more and more resplendent in his black and white vision. He could freely embrace and possess the resplendence of her. He didn't choose to leave as usual. Instead, he took Yu Ye's hand and came to her usual seat. He quietly watched her hibernation, until she was immersed in the puppet's body and her soul was hazy. He was willing to leave. Luoqiu didn't extinguish the candles in the hall. Letting the candles accompany her, he gradually disappeared from here. It temporarily meant that his day as a boss was almost over. Vaguely, Luoqiu felt that he seemed to have some kind of connection with the altar that he couldn't understand. It seemed that the relationship between him and the altar was closer than before. He still couldn't figure out the thoughts of the altar, but it seemed that the altar began to actively respond to some of his thoughts. Perhaps it became more dull, such as closing the door. The real closing, as long as he appeared, the passive situation that was bound to be a transaction was a little different. Luoqiu intuitively felt that he seemed to be able to freely turn on and off this passive ability. This situation, which was not suitable for him, would not happen again. Luoqiu couldn't tell whether this was good or bad. It seemed that the altar gave him a higher degree of freedom. But if it was a higher degree of freedom, it seemed that he was more suitable for the altar's needs. Had his emotions been unknowingly worn out to the extent that he himself felt that they were dispensable? But his heart was still filled with all the people in these years, and there was no difference. He vaguely felt that there seemed to be some kind of opportunity, but it was gone in a flash. He didn't even realize it, or it was because of something more irresistible that he forgot about it. The moment he stepped out of the club, Luoqiu even had a strange feeling. The altar seemed to want him to continue like this. She felt as if a pair of hands were gently hugging her. In fact, the white Alpha had been parked outside the police station for the past 2 days. In fact, there were 2 other similar Alpha in different places. One was in the University of Political Science and Law, and the other was in the Traffic Police Brigade. There was no doubt that this was the arm of Miss Song. After collecting a large amount of information through the Zhang family, they finally narrowed down the suspects to 3 people back then. Miss Song Ying, who was sent over, was quite persistent and even went into action personally. However, this kind of monitoring work was actually boring. At least these days, she just stayed in the car without doing anything. The food she ate and drank was bought from the street, which was not exquisite. She didn't even exercise. Song Ying felt that a layer of oil seemed to be squeezed out of her stomach. Miss Song suddenly felt a little wronged. Why did she have to be so careful? So angry? She moved the seat, almost half lying down. Song Ying, who felt moldy, yawned and asked casually, "Did Zhou Yuxing really not come out again?" "No, miss." The person beside her answered quickly. At the same time, he saw that this seemed to be the limit of Miss Song's mental strength, so he said, "Miss, how about I send someone to send you back to the Zhang family to rest? Leave this kind of work to us." "Then wouldn't I have wasted my hard work these days?" Song Ying suddenly snorted, damn it, don't let me find out the truth." So fierce, so fierce. In fact, Miss Song Ying also had her own little drama in her mind. The noble and cold Miss Song Ying threw a pile of information on the table, arrogantly, "See? I've found out the truth about you. It's effortless." So Luoqiu looked at her with admiration. "Song Ying, you're so amazing. I didn't know that you cared so much about me. I'm sorry I didn't treat you well in the past. Can you give me a chance?" "Miss Song Ying, you know you're wrong? Unfortunately, it's too late unless you—" Miss. At this moment, the bodyguard felt that something was wrong with his Mississippi. After an inexplicable strange smile appeared on his face, he couldn't help but call out carefully, "Oh, nothing, I suddenly thought of something." Song Ying's expression didn't change. She lifted the curtain and glanced out. "Oh right, withdraw the people from the traffic police and focus on investigating Gao Wen and Zhou Yuxing." The bodyguard nodded, agreeing with what Song Ying said. Today, they had found Gao Wen and Zhou Yuxing in the cemetery one after another. "Okay, I'll go and give the order now." Song Ying continued, "Later, run further away and don't buy me any rice or soy milk. It makes me want to vomit." The evening lights had already been lit, and the streets had turned from bustling to sparse. It was almost the end of the evening meal. "Understood." The bodyguard nodded and said casually, "There's a place selling steamed chicken at the end of the street. Miss, do you want to try it?" Song Ying waved her hand indifferently. "It's up to you, as long as it's not soy milk or rice." "I'll go right away." The bodyguard immediately moved. There were 2 bodyguards in the driver's seat in front. They were both experienced people, so it shouldn't be too big of a problem for her to leave for a short time. Thinking about this, the bodyguard went to open the door of the car. But at this moment, the door was knocked a few times. The knocking sound made the bodyguard frown, and at the same time, Song Ying's expression turned serious. The bodyguard blocked Song Ying with one hand and pressed the other hand behind his waist. Then, he abruptly pulled open the door of the Alpha and shouted sternly, "Who is it?" A smiling young man in plain clothes stood outside the car door with 2 bags in his hands. "Luoqiu." "Master Chiu?" The bodyguard naturally recognized the new young master of the Song family at first glance and couldn't help but be caught off guard. Of course, Song Ying was also caught off guard. She widened her eyes and opened her mouth. After a long time, she squeezed out some words that weren't very polite. "You, this guy, where did you come from? I was passing by and saw you here, so I came to see you." Luoqiu smiled slightly. "I guessed you didn't eat anything, so I bought some." "Master Chiu, you're so considerate." The bodyguard's attitude naturally changed. They were trained and instilled with the idea of serving the Song family. It was quite the style of a servant in ancient times. Are you so kind? Song Ying snorted in a low voice. You're not here to laugh at me, right? Thank you for doing so much for me, Luoqiu said softly. Song Ying's imposing manner was instantly defeated. What did you buy? Let me tell you, I'm not the kind of person who will stuff rubbish into the king's stomach. Soy milk and rice. Do you want to eat? Luoqiu lifted the bag in his hand. It's an old shop, I used to eat it often. It's not bad and it's still warm. Oh no. The bodyguard sighed. This was what the young miss specifically said she didn't want. Sure enough, Song Ying's lips trembled. Okay, then I won't make it difficult. Chapter 1190. The driver and the 2 bodyguards in the front passenger seat also got out of the car. The 3 bodyguards ran to a convenience store not far from the car, about 10 seconds away. They found a table facing the street and sat down. Is it okay for us to be so far away from Miss? One of them asked curiously. Only Miss O and Master Chiu were left in the car. Do you think Master Chiu will hurt Miss? His companion asked angrily. The people in the car were likely to take over the Song family in the future. Not really. Or, in another sense, it's not bad to hurt him? The bodyguard chuckled. I think old Master Chiu will be happy to see Master Chiu take Mrs. Blood. F***ck off. The person behind slapped him on the back of the head. Since when is it your business to discuss Miss and young Master's matters? After finishing his meal, he went outside to keep watch. Although we're outside the police station, we can't relax. Is it rice? The bodyguard swallowed his saliva and finally chose to ask for a cup of instant noodles from the shop assistant. To be honest, although many people in the Song family village were Chinese or descendants of Chinese, they had been eating South American food since they were young. It wasn't that Chinese food tasted bad, but they couldn't get used to it. Moreover, they had to eat the same food continuously. Instant noodles, on the other hand, were different. This thing was pretty popular overseas. The Song family had mercenaries trained in the village behind their back. They carried out many dangerous missions in secret. Some of the Song family's warriors failed their missions and were locked up in prison. It was said that instant noodles were a hard currency in prison, and their status was on par with cigarettes and perfumed soap. In the back seat of the Alpha, Song Ying was taking small bites of porridge. It was rare to see Miss Song eating in such a ladylike manner, as if she was eating a delicacy meticulously prepared by a 3-star Michelin chef. A piece of porridge could be finished in a few bites, but Miss Song could not even finish 1/3 of it in a few minutes. Not used to it? No, I'm just thinking about something. Song Ying shook her head and put it down. She looked at Luoqiu and said, Today, my men discovered that Gao Wen and Zhou Yuxing both went to your father's grave. Luoqiu frowned. Song Ying hurriedly said, My people are very careful. They didn't destroy Uncle Luo Qi's tomb. Don't worry. I even asked someone to donate money to the management office so that they have to clean it up every morning and night. Thank you. Luoqiu smiled. Song Ying said, Your father is a member of the Song family after all. He's also my uncle. It's only right for me to do this. By the way, your family doesn't live here, right? I was just passing by. Are you here to investigate Zhou Yuxing too? How could they pass by on the way? Song Ying calmed down and thought about it carefully. She roughly understood why Luoqiu was here. But this bastard still had some conscience. He knew to buy some food. I can't say for sure. Luoqiu shook his head slightly. It's just that I have to meet some people in the end. Luoqiu seemed to be in low spirits. After saying this, he looked out of the car window at the entrance of the police station. Song Ying hesitated for a moment. Suddenly, her eyes lit up and she asked, Luoqiu, I have something to ask you. Go ahead. Song Ying moved closer. I'm just saying hypothetically. Suppose the real culprit is caught. What do you plan to do? Luoqiu retracted his gaze and turned to look at Song Ying. They were very close to each other. Because the other party had moved, the distance between them was less than a finger's length. Their eyes met. Song Ying only felt a sudden heat covering her face from the inside out. But she didn't move, nor did she intend to retreat. With the Song family's ability, even if you want to shoot the culprit on the spot, we can guarantee that you'll be fine. The next day will be the same as usual. So, what do you think? That's right. What should I think? Luochio whispered. According to qualifications, I have the qualifications. Song Ying was stunned. Qualifications? This bastard, is he too calm? Don't you want revenge? Song Ying asked subconsciously. Luochio shook his head and said faintly, For me, there are some things that are missing when one is done. However, if it's really needed less, I'll still make it less. Song Ying looked at Luochio confusedly. Suddenly, she did something that surprised her but she didn't regret. She suddenly opened her hands and hugged Luochio's head tightly. Boss Luo was quite astonished at this moment. Until he completely clung to the soft part of her chest. He could hear her gradually accelerating heartbeat. Song Ying only felt waves of heat on her face. It must be very uncomfortable. The enemy is clearly in front of you. When I was a child, when my parents died tragically in front of me, I also felt this uncomfortable. I know who the culprit is, but I was very young, really young. Not to mention revenge, I didn't even dare to kill a chicken. I didn't even dare to let Grandpa feel that I was in pain. I could only cover myself with a smile and innocence. I was afraid that they would be sadder because of me. I understand, but you don't have to pretend to be strong. If it's really uncomfortable, it's okay. I won't laugh at you. The car suddenly became quiet. After Song Ying finished speaking, she could hear her own heartbeat clearly. But Luochio didn't say anything. She just hugged him like this. Hey, can't you at least say something? Song Ying called out softly with some discomfort. The discomfort was because her nose touched his hair, it was itchy. This fellow. Could it be that he had fallen asleep? What kind of plot is this? There's a level of idiocy, okay? You were so energetic when you came. Do you think you're the male lead of a shoujo manga? My waist. Complaining in her heart, Song Ying wanted to push the fellow in her arms away, but the more she thought about it, the more she couldn't bear to do so. Perhaps it was just like when she was young, she would only show her painful emotions when there was no one around. Sleep, if you really fall asleep, I'll accept it. Song Ying raised her head and slowly exhaled. If she lowered her head, she would definitely sneeze. But when she looked at the roof of the car, her eyes suddenly blurred, and some strange scenes flashed by like flashes of light. She saw a bustling city. The degree of prosperity even surpassed all the international metropolises in the world. She saw hundreds of tall buildings everywhere, and cars suspended in the air. It flashed by. She saw the land covered in the flames of war, as if she had returned to the era of 60 or 70 years ago. It flashed by again. The sky was gloomy, countless huge factories were emitting thick smoke, and the world seemed to be dyed with a layer of gray. People lowered their heads, walking in an orderly manner, without any deviation, without saying a word. The world was moving, and the world was silent. Suddenly, a ferocious giant beast jumped over the wall that was tens of meters high, and swooped down from above, pouncing towards Song Ying. Its bloody mouth was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. Song Ying subconsciously cried out in alarm, only to feel cold all over. Finally, she saw the beige leather roof of the car. Luochio instantly opened his eyes. Dimension. At the same time, those things that flashed by disappeared in front of Song Ying's eyes. It was as if something was pulling her back. She subconsciously lowered her head, and saw Luochio's calm eyes. What happened to me? Song Ying subconsciously asked. Luochio said, You suddenly screamed. Song Ying frowned, only to feel a little dizzy, and even a faint swelling pain. She shook her head. Maybe I was distracted, my brain was suddenly in a mess, and I saw some strange things. It's nothing, maybe I didn't get enough sleep. Luoqiu muttered, and stared at Song Ying seriously. Have you encountered such a situation before? This made Song Ying subconsciously lower her head. I don't remember. I don't think so. He seemed to be quite concerned. Then rest more. Luoqiu nodded. Surveillance work like this, leave it to the professionals. I'll watch. Song Ying nodded. It's getting late, I'll go back first. Luoqiu said goodbye, got out of the car, and looked at Song Ying before leaving. Thank you for letting me have a good sleep. I'll treat it as returning it to you. Song Ying said indifferently, didn't you sleep with me last time? One time each, we're even now. Luoqiu smiled. The perfume tastes good. The corners of Miss Song's mouth curled up into a smile. After that, Miss Ying leaned on the driver's seat in front of her, watching Luoqi gradually disappear in front of the windshield, muttering, even a dead man can praise people. Master Chiu left? The bodyguard didn't dare to come back until now. Song Ying said grumpily, are you blind, can't you see it? The bodyguard looked at the other bodyguard, and the other bodyguard looked at the third one. They just looked at each other without speaking. By the way, find me the nearest beauty salon, I want to find someone to give you a massage. Song Ying sat down with her hands on her waist. I'm so tired. My waist. The bodyguard looked at the other bodyguard, and the other bodyguard looked at the third one, and then gulped. Tired? Waist. Waist is tired. So, young Master Chiu is so fierce. He came here on the street? Got it. The bodyguard nodded quickly. Miss, you've worked hard. In the dark alley, two men wearing black suits and carrying suitcases appeared. They were Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao. Lu Mingho was a bit of a neat freak. Since he walked into the alley, he had been covering his mouth and nose with a handkerchief. As for Wei Zidao, now he pulled a cordon at the entrance of the alley. Brother Hao, the front and back are blocked, no one should break in. Wei Zidao walked back quickly. Lu Mingho looked at the ground. Qian Er, the place where he was beaten should be here. Let's get to work. Wei Zidao nodded, and began to take out some bottles, jars and a bronze mirror from the suitcase. Some people once thought that if they could go back to the scene of the murder, they would be able to directly see the murderer and the process of the murder. In this way, many unsolved cases could be effectively solved, and there wouldn't even be cases that were wrongly accused. But this was just an unrealistic assumption. How could you go back in time? According to the theory of relativity, as long as you were faster than light. At present, it was still wishful thinking. That said, it didn't hinder people's imagination to build the future. Human beings were indeed the most imaginative and creative species in the world, especially after they came into contact with the strange way of using energy, such as Taoist magic arts. The administration had developed another method of tracking. At this time, Wei Zidao sprinkled the contents of the bottle around, and then sat on the ground with his legs crossed. Then he cut his finger with a knife, and dripped 3 drops of blood on the bronze mirror. The blood was quickly absorbed by the bronze mirror. The bronze mirror suddenly became pure black. Lu Mingho didn't stay idle at this time, but walked behind Wei Zidao, and put his palm on it. Wei Zidao's eyes were closed at this time, and the bronze mirror in his hands began to shake slightly. A little light suddenly appeared on the pure black mirror. There was no bright spot, just a small one. After that, the second bright spot appeared, but it was on the other side of the mirror. The bright spots began to appear little by little, and they were distributed on different positions of the bronze mirror irregularly. The closer to the center, the brighter, and the dim spots on the edge. After that, Wei Zidao slowly opened his eyes, and his face was pale and sweaty. Brother Hao, it's done. There are a total of 59 different breaths that pass through this alley in these days. Lu Mingho nodded. To be precise, we only need to investigate 54 breaths. Wei Zidao nodded, including Qian Er, Chang Shao and a few others. 54 people. Lu Mingho murmured at this time, although it's a lot, it's much better than looking for a needle in a haystack. Let's start with this. In the alley, an iron door slowly opened, and a young man in a waiter's uniform came out with 2 bags of garbage. If there was anyone who could easily come to this place, of course, it was the staff of the bar next to it. Wei Zidao saw this, and directly got up. Lu Mingho smiled at this time. Take a rest, I also know hypnotism. What do you want to do? Seeing the 2 men coming towards him, the waiter couldn't help but feel a little nervous, but before he could do more, he felt darkness in front of his eyes and lost consciousness. When the elevator door opened, there happened to be a fashionably dressed man standing outside the door. Zhou Yuxing frowned and glanced at him. This was his neighbor. This man should be planning to go out, but it was almost 11 p.m., so he probably wasn't going to a proper place. Hello, Officer Zhou. The man quickly greeted him, and then walked into the elevator with his head lowered, as if he was a little scared. Zhou Yuxing simply nodded and walked out of the elevator. The man pressed the elevator button and suddenly said, Officer Zhou, are you all right? Are you at home these days? Nothing. Zhou Yuxing said indifferently, a cabinet at home is broken, I took it down and fixed it. Did I disturb you? No. The man nodded. Fixed the cabinet? Who would believe that? This guy usually didn't come home, but whenever he came home, he would make a noise. God knows what the hell he was doing. But Zhou Yuxing used to come home drunk, and after coming home, he would quarrel with his wife, and sometimes even fight, breaking things in the house. As a neighbor, he was already used to it. But in the past 2 or 3 years, this kind of situation didn't seem to happen for a long time. Zhou Yuxing also didn't come home for 2 or 3 days. But his wife and son didn't come back for a long time. Later, it was said that his wife moved out with his son, and it seemed that they had divorced. Opening the door and turning on the lights, Zhou Yuxing pinched his eyebrows. What he saw was a mess in the living room. The coffee table was broken, the TV was also on the ground, and even the sofa was tilted to one side. Things were everywhere. Zhou Yuxing closed the door, sighed, and walked in. He picked up an ornament on the ground and seemed to want to put it somewhere, but when he looked, there was no place to put it, so he casually threw it back on the ground. He covered his face with both hands and wiped it hard. Then, he turned off the lights, walked to the sofa, and sat down. He raised his head and closed his eyes. The room was terribly quiet. In the darkness, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air, silently. Looking at the bearded Zhou Yuxing who smelled of alcohol, Luochio's eyes gradually turned cold. He slowly reached out his hand, and slowly reached out to Zhou Yuxing's neck. His 5 fingers pinched down. Once again, the boss's left eye turned into chaos, but this time, he controlled it very well and didn't bring out the horrible vision like last time. But even so, everything around him floated up little by little. Zhou Yuxing still didn't open his eyes, even though he looked painful at this moment. The suffocating pain finally triggered Zhou Yuxing's instincts. He kicked his feet and put his hands on his neck, grabbing the hand that was strangling him. Finally, Luochio's hand loosened little by little. He slowly exhaled. Zhou Yuxing's expression began to soften, and he fainted. The floating things in the living room gradually fell down. Luochio closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he had returned to normal. He opened his palm, and a cloud of black gas came out of it. Luochio clenched his fist and dispersed it. He also sat down beside Zhou Yuxing and slowly closed his eyes. At this moment, Zhou Yuxing had a dream. It was a dream that he wanted to forget, but didn't dare to forget. It was a dream that he hid every day and night for nearly 4 years. In the police car, everyone was fully armed. The criminals have a lot of weapons. Repeat, the criminals have a lot of weapons. Chapter 1191. Calling, on the 9th floor, I hope someone is injured and killed a criminal, requesting for help. Zhou Yuxing took a long breath, watching Luo Qi coming in or watching his every move. Maybe there's still hope. Luo Qi stood up. Before this, he had checked the injuries of the 2 companions, at least they were still breathing. Zhou Yuxing nodded subconsciously. He looked at Luo Qi, a man of similar age to himself. This was a man who could think of the word perseverance just by looking at his eyes. "I've been chasing this guy all the way, I didn't expect you to be here." Luo Qi looked around and asked casually, "Old Zhou, did you also hear the sound and chase here?" Because they had cooperated many times, most of the members of the first and second teams knew each other. Besides, they usually worked in the same building, so they knew each other after all. Zhou Yuxing shook his head and then nodded. At this time, his thoughts were in a mess. He hadn't completely accepted what happened in front of him. Luo Qi didn't say anything, silently patting Zhou Yuxing's shoulder. His eyes were still shining with dazzling light, dazzling. Zhou Yuxing looked down at his companions on the ground, perhaps to avoid them, or perhaps to look at the two young people. They did a good job. Luo Qi grabbed Zhou Yuxing's shoulder hard, then held Zhou Yuxing's cheeks with both hands, and forced him to face himself. "Don't forget our identity. When we're afraid, when we're scared, no matter what, we must stand in the front row, even if we fall down. Now, take a deep breath." Dazzling, Zhou Yuxing suddenly quivered, like a drowning man who suddenly recovered his breath. He took a deep breath of the air mixed with the smell of smoke. "I'm fine." Zhou Yuxing slowly sighed again, looking at Luo Qi's eyes. "What's the situation now?" Luo Qi quickly said, "It's hard to say. These guys don't look like ordinary robbers. We've rescued one hostage, but there's another one left. He was taken all the way upstairs, which is the most troublesome. In the building, it's difficult for the snipers outside to shoot. We plan to force the guy who took the hostage to an open place as much as possible." Already rescued one? Zhou Yuxing opened his mouth slightly. How long had it been? It was Yi Yan who saved him. Luo Qi smiled and said, "This kid is very powerful. All right, you stay here and watch. There can't be a gap in the encirclement. Be careful." With that, Luo Qi exhaled, lifted his spirits, and walked out of the door. "Hold on, Captain Luo. What's wrong?" Luo Qi turned around in confusion and looked at Zhou Yuxing as if he wanted to say something. You're not afraid? What's there to be afraid of?" Luo Qi quickly patted his chest as he smiled and said, "Aren't you here as well? Brother Zhou, you weren't afraid when you went deep into the enemy's territory 5 years ago. 3 years ago, you weren't afraid when you faced the criminals alone. If you weren't afraid, why should I be? It's not convenient for me to ask about Team 2's internal affairs, but, Brother Zhou, you've rested enough, haven't you?" Zhou Yuxing stood rooted to the ground. Rest? Did he just treat the decadence of these days as rest? His departing figure was just like his eyes, emitting a light that Zhou Yuxing couldn't face. He suddenly understood why Luo Qi's eyes were so bright. It was because of trust. He trusted himself and was willing to trust others. Scenes of the past flashed through Zhou Yuxing's mind. He had made great contributions, the first-class kind. He had been in danger, the kind that could easily consign him to eternal damnation. Logically speaking, his career should have been bright. But Gawain came, the son-in-law of a superior. Gawain had also made great contributions, been injured, and gone through fire and water. There was nothing to be picky about. They were on the same starting line, but the only thing Gawain had ahead of him was another layer of identity. There were too many people in the system. Everyone was outstanding and capable, but it was not Zhou Yuxing's turn to choose the best. Perhaps it was fate, to be in the same place as someone who was equally capable and outstanding, but had more resources than him. Including Luo Qi. Luo Qi didn't have many resources, but he was really capable of controlling such a group of capable subordinate. What do I have? Zhou Yuxing asked himself subconsciously. He was capable, but he was dispirited. He also had time, but he spent it elsewhere. He tried hard, but after one setback, he couldn't get back up again. He felt that he was proud, and proud people were the most fragile. So he became a pile of dog **t, degenerating into himself, and couldn't blame anyone else. You're a useless man. What else can you do other than throw a tantrum at me, the person who sleeps beside you? His relationship with his wife became worse and worse, and he didn't know when and where his life began to diverge. Zhou Yusheng looked at the two young men lying in a pool of blood, waiting for rescue. A few minutes ago, they had asked him, "Brother Zhou, have you been involved in any major cases before?" "I'll tell you later." This was the only answer Zhou Yusheng could give. "I was once glorious, but that was only once. I was once glorious, so that's good. Even if I'm down now, I was once glorious. Those things can be cherished, things that can be used to cover up my shame." It shouldn't have been long, but the rescue companions came. When they rushed into the room and hurriedly helped the two young men who had been led astray by him, Zhou Yusheng took a deep breath. "Send the injured men away first. I'll go support Captain Luo." Zhou Yusheng looked at the people who came to support him, then took a deep breath and picked up the bullets they were equipped with from the two injured young men. Seeing Zhou Yusheng's sullen face and walking out, the rescue team couldn't help but be surprised. What's wrong with him? This didn't seem to be the behavior of a person who retreated in the face of trouble, who had long given up on himself and was just planning to muddle along. Zhou Yusheng quickly caught up with Luo Qi, which even surprised Luo Qi. At this time, Luo Qi was leaning against the wall at the corner of a corridor. "The support team has carried away the men in their hands, don't worry." Zhou Yusheng didn't say too many unimportant things, and his eyes were as sharp as a falcon's. "The criminals took hostages. If they are professionals, they will definitely think that we intend to lead them to a convenient position for snipers to shoot, so they won't fall for the trap." "Are the criminals inside?" Zhou Yusheng asked directly. Luo Qi nodded. "Two people, one hostage. We can't wait." Zhou Yusheng took a deep breath. "Let's end this quickly. You have a way?" Zhou Yusheng nodded, then turned around and suddenly hit the fire protection device on the wall with the handle of his pistol. In an instant, the shrill bell rang through the entire building under construction. Don't kill me!" The security guard fell to the ground in pain, and blood kept flowing from his shoulder. It was shot through by the thugs. He was really frightened, and his face was covered with mud, but he didn't dare to move, because the cold muzzle was pointed at the back of his head. Behind him were two fierce-looking Southeast Asians in vests and holsters. They seemed to be able to speak Chinese. At this moment, the ear-piercing sound of the fire alarm instantly made the two thugs tense up. "Damn it! What do they want to do? Brother! What should we do now? There are only two of us left." The man called Brother quickly said, "We have a hostage, so they don't dare to attack. This is our only chance." "You don't have a chance, surrender." At the entrance, a figure suddenly rushed out, directly interrupting the conversation between the two thugs. Zhou Yusheng stared at the muzzle of his gun, aiming at the two thugs, and made a shooting posture. "You've been surrounded. Our people will arrive in 2 minutes at most. Don't count on your companions, you're the only ones left. Surrender." "Surrender? Ha 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 ha!" The thug laughed grimly, and casually fired a few shots with the SMG in his hand. This forced Zhou Yusheng to hide behind the wall at the entrance. "Come out, if you don't come out, I'll kill this hostage. I'll count to 3. Wait, don't count." Zhou Yusheng took a deep breath and stepped out. "Put your gun down." Zhou Yusheng squatted down little by little, and put the pistol on the ground. "Kick it over." Zhou Yusheng gritted his teeth and kicked the pistol away. After that, the other thug instantly picked up the pistol that was kicked away. "You come here." Zhou Yusheng came closer little by little with a little fear in his eyes. "I can replace the hostage. Let go of this security guard. He's injured, and he's bleeding so much. He'll die after a long time, then you won't have a hostage. On the contrary, if I replace him, you still have a chance. You're not qualified to negotiate with me. Think carefully." Zhou Yusheng gritted his teeth. "Kill me, kill him, and you won't be able to escape. Use me in exchange, and you still have a chance. There's no time for you to think, our people are coming. "Don't worry, I won't move, I just want to save the hostage." As he spoke, Zhou Yusheng suddenly took out the handcuffs and cuffed one side of the handcuffs to his left wrist. At the same time, he opened the other side of the cuff. "Look carefully, I'll lock myself up. Release the hostage first." The eyes of the two thugs, including the hostage, were now nervously watching Zhou Yusheng's movements, looking at the handcuff that was about to cuff Zhou Yusheng's right wrist. "Release the hostage," Zhou Yusheng suddenly roared. The two thugs' tensed nerves suddenly tightened again, and they were momentarily absent-minded. In that split second, the thug who was holding the hostage was pushed to the ground by a strong force. It came from outside the window. When Zhou Yusheng broke the fire alarm bell, he and Luo Qi directly split up. Luo Qi used the scaffolding on the outer wall of the building as a cover to crawl behind the thugs bit by bit, waiting for an opportunity. The moment he successfully threw the thug holding the hostage to the ground, Zhou Yusheng instantly rushed to the other thug like a scorpion on the hunt. Luo Qi threw himself at one, and Zhou Yusheng knocked into another. The four of them fell to the ground at the same time, and started fighting with each other. After that, the thug who was pounced on by Luo Qi suddenly bulged his muscles and kicked Luo Qi more than a meter away. Stinky cop! After the thug got rid of Luo Qi, he immediately started shooting with the SMG in his hand. Seeing this, Luo Qi's face changed greatly, and he jumped out again. This time, he threw himself at the hostage security guard. With the security guard, Luoqiu suddenly rolled behind a load-bearing wall. At this time, during the fight, Zhou Yusheng successfully took back his gun from the thug who picked up his gun, and shot him to break free. But facing the thug who was shooting with the SMG, Zhou Yusheng had to roll aside and hide behind the wall. Next to him was Luo Qi and the hostage security guard, and they were only 1 meter away. "I'm going to kill you all." Seeing his brother lying on the ground vomiting blood, the thug's ferocity was immediately exposed. The terrible firepower directly suppressed Luo Qi and Zhou Yusheng, making them unable to move. "Don't kill me!" The security guard covered his head in horror and curled up. At this time, Luo Qi took a deep breath and did something that surprised Zhou Yusheng. He took off his bulletproof vest and directly put it on the security guard. Seeing this, Zhou Yusheng was stunned for a moment. But in an instant, he bit his cheek and took many deep breaths. Luo Qi seemed to have guessed what Zhou Yusheng wanted to do, and quickly stopped him with his eyes. "Lao Luo, you asked me if I had enough rest." Zhou Yusheng suddenly stood up. "I'm telling you now. I have enough rest." "Don't." Zhou Yusheng suddenly jumped out. But the thug seemed to have expected this. He grinned fiercely and quickly dodged Zhou Yusheng's sudden attack. He raised his gun and directly hit Zhou Yusheng's arm, making his gun fall to the ground. Seeing this, Luo Qi also jumped out. This time, he threw the thug to the ground and kicked away the SMG in his hand. Zhou Yusheng intended to endure the pain and subconsciously wanted to pick up his gun, but the thug was surprisingly tenacious. Now that he fell to the ground, he forcefully supported himself with his palm and kicked Zhou Yusheng's abdomen. At this moment, the three of them fell to the ground at the same time. The gun was within reach of the three of them. Like a human pyramid, Luo Qi and Zhou Yusheng suppressed the thug at the same time. In this moment of life and death, the thug's ferocity was completely unleashed. He roared, and with amazing strength, he broke free from Luo Qi and Zhou Yusheng's entanglement and snatched the gun with one hand. The two of them climbed on top of the thug and tangled with him until the end. Zhou Yusheng reached out and snatched the gun. As they rolled, the thug kept roaring. Life and death had arrived in an instant. A huge boom rang out, causing everything to come to a halt. The gun was still in the thug's hand, but it was Zhou Yusheng's hand that pulled it, and the bullet entered Luo Qi's body. Chapter 1192. Another gunshot was heard. The security guard who had put on the bulletproof vest was no longer in the room. He was so frightened that he didn't think about running away during the chaos. But the gunshot made him quickly squat on the ground. Then, what happened in the room? He didn't know, but he saw people. The police officers were running crazily from the corridor. He knew he was saved. The sound of gunshots at close range could easily damage the eardrums. Why did the members of the shooting club wear noise-canceling headphones? The loud sound made Zhou Yuxing feel like he lost his hearing again. He felt like fate was playing a joke on him. He had enough rest and woke up, but the person who woke him up was going to sleep instead. Dark red liquid spread from his chest. How good would it be if he didn't take off the bulletproof vest? He seemed to have lost all his strength. But the thug still had strength, even more ferocious. The thug who fell to the ground instantly pushed the weak Zhou Yuxing away, and also pushed Luoqi away. He was still grinning, because in this battle, he was very lucky. Because the goddess of luck favored him. Because he obtained the greatest benefit from this situation where there was only a slim chance of survival. Luoqi was lying flat on the ground. His pupils hadn't dispersed yet. He just looked at the ceiling. Maybe there were too many things in his mind at this moment. Zhou Yuxing understood this kind of gaze. When the thug picked up his gun again and aimed at him, Zhou Yuxing felt his mind go blank again. You're not afraid, so what am I afraid of? How long ago? Maybe only 10 minutes ago. He shouted with tears, blood, anger, and pain. Filled with glory, depravity, and despair, when the gunman's bullet hit Zhou Yuxing's shoulder, he became even more like a beast, like a bull. Zhou Yuxing hugged the thug's waist and pushed him crazily toward the unprotected window. The thug just thought Zhou Yuxing wanted to fight with his life. But when his waist pressed against the window, he suddenly understood. Zhou Yuxing wanted to die with him. Zhou Yuxing roared. His face was red and his eyes were bloodshot. He didn't want to live anymore. The two of them flipped over the windowsill and fell straight down. Bang! Like a clap of thunder, it cut through the darkness and split open the earth. Zhou Yuxing suddenly opened his eyes and felt his surroundings become heavy. He seemed to have heard something. Doctor, the patient is awake. However, the darkness that had just been split open was instantly restored. It was like a cage. A cage had trapped him inside. He tried to call out, but he couldn't make a sound. After a very, very long time, he once again heard a voice calling out to him. He opened his eyes once more. A gust of wind carrying the fragrance of flowers drifted over. Zhou Yuxing saw a nurse bending over the blood pressure monitor. You're finally awake. That's great, the nurse said with a smile. Zhou Yuxing only felt a moment of confusion. He subconsciously wanted to get up, so he exerted force with both hands, but in an instant, a tearing pain made him unable to get up. Don't move. The nurse hurriedly supported him. You were shot in the shoulder, and the wound hasn't healed yet. If you move, the wound will open up again, Zhou Yuxing nodded subconsciously. He only felt an unbearable pain in his head, and a feeling of something being tightly wrapped around his head. It was the bandage wrapped around his forehead. The nurse said that when he fell from a high place, not only did he hit his head, but there were also fractures in many parts of his body. He didn't die, but he really managed to survive. Later, Gawain came. After receiving the notice, he immediately came to visit. Only then did Zhou Yuxing find out that he had been in a coma for 2 weeks. Gawain sat by the window, slowly peeling an apple with a knife. At the same time, he looked at Zhou Yuxing and didn't say a word for a long time. Zhou Yuxing seemed to be thinking about something. Seeing Gawain looking at him without moving, he frowned subconsciously. Captain Gawain, is there something on my face? You really can't remember? Gawain suddenly asked. Zhou Yuxing shook his head and pinched his forehead at the same time. I really can't remember what happened. I just remember. He tried his best to recall the incident, and his eyes were in a daze. I remember. At that time, Captain Luo took off his bulletproof vest. Then I rushed out, and then he rushed out too. I really can't remember what happened after that. What happened after that? What about Captain Luo? Is he okay? Luo Qi was buried a few days ago, Gawain said softly. Zhou Yuxing fell silent. For a long time, Gawain didn't say a word. Then, the phone rang. It was from the station. Gawain stood up and patted Zhou Yuxing's shoulder. The doctor said that your head was hit, and it might affect your memory, but it's okay. You should recover soon. Take this time to recuperate well. By the way, the hostage you saved a few days ago sent a silk banner. I accepted it for you and put it on your table. Zhou Yuxing didn't say anything, but he was a little reluctant. For some reason, his mood was unusually low. Gawain said again, "You did well this time. Although you lost your gun, it should have been lost when you fell while fighting with the criminals. We've found it now. It's not a blemish. Take good care of yourself. We'll wait for you to return to the team." Zhou Yuxing nodded. After that, he couldn't sleep. He couldn't sleep. He hadn't had a good night's sleep in the past few years. He was afraid that if he fell asleep, he wouldn't be able to wake up, so he continued to rest. In the living room, waves of black gas slowly emanated from Luochio's body. He sat on the sofa with his hands on his legs. His sitting posture was straight, and he sat like this for the entire night until the sun rose. More and more black smoke appeared, as if it was a thick ink. But in the end, he still slowly opened his eyes. The black gas, which was as dense as ink, began to shrink and gather in his palm. Finally, it condensed into a bead. The next moment, the bead shattered in Luochio's palm and finally disappeared. He let out a long sigh. Looking at the sleeping Zhou Yuxing, Luochio didn't move for a long time. After a long time, when the slightly bright sky attracted a touch of crimson color, Luochio stood up, picked up the blanket on the sofa, and gently covered Zhou Yuxing with it. "You've already died once. There's no point in dying again." Luochio reached into Zhou Yuxing's pocket and took out a bottle, which slowly disappeared. Gawain had an uncontrollable feeling. It was like a sudden impulse, like some kind of call. Something seemed to be leading him to the cemetery again. He had clearly been here the day before. When he arrived, he saw a young man in front of the tombstone, concentrating on cleaning the grave. Gawain's eyes immediately narrowed. He subconsciously thought that he was once again seeing the hallucination that had troubled him for the past few days. Gawain remained silent as he watched the young man clean the originally clean grave bit by bit. After a while, the young man put down the things he was cleaning. Then, he lit the incense and stuck it in front of the tombstone. Suddenly, the young man handed Gawain a few sticks of incense. Gawain couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't say anything and subconsciously took it. Then, he lit the incense and stuck it in the incense burner. Maintaining silence in front of the grave was the greatest respect for the dead. For a long time, Luochio and Gawain quietly looked at the tombstone like this. "Thank you for often coming here to visit my father when I didn't know." This was the first sentence Luochio said. Gawain still couldn't tell if this young man was real or not. This young man who had once discussed problems with him in class was still the same as when he first met him. That feeling lingered in his heart. He didn't see a trace of Loki in this young man. "Are you real?" Gawain asked hesitantly. "Do you want me to be fake?" Luochio asked calmly. Gawain shook his head and frowned. He knew that if all this was real, Luochio couldn't have kept appearing these past few days, and appearing so strangely. But if it was fake, how did he know? Then you. Luochio took out a bottle from his pocket and handed it to Gawain. Gawain subconsciously took it. "Risperidone," Luochio said softly. "Don't give this medicine to Zhou Yuxing anymore. You know?" Finally, Gawain's expression changed slightly. "It's not important." Luochio shook his head. Gawain took a deep breath. His elegant expression instantly turned fierce. He took a step forward and grabbed Luochio's collar. His eyes widened. "You say it's not important? Don't you know how your father died? He was shot to death by Zhou Yuxing. You say it's not important." Luochio said calmly, So you faked the test results, right? Gawain said sternly. I had no choice. Luo Qi was perfect, completely and utterly perfect. I won't allow him to die like this. Even if he died in the line of duty, he should have died heroically, not in such a ridiculous way. Luoqiu didn't let Gawain let go. He just looked at Gawain's messy eyes quietly. And then? You made Zhou Yuxing become like this to make Loki perfect? This is a continuation. Gawain roared. It's Loki's continuation. Zhou Yuxing's life belongs to Loki. I want him to be tortured day and night. He took away my only friend. Unforgivable, unforgivable. I've worked so hard all this time, but no one has ever looked me in the eye. No matter how hard I work, I'll always be the son-in-law of Gawain. My promotion is because I used the back door. I know what these people say about me behind my back. Only Loki, only your father, only he truly understands me and never looks down on me. Only he can walk into my heart, understand me, encourage me, and support me. He's my only friend. He's perfect. There can't be a stain on him, absolutely not. Zhou Yuxing is trash. A bastard. He's always been jealous that I stole his position. He's lazy and useless. So what if he's made contributions in the past? That's the past. A person who has no fighting spirit and only knows how to resent others for stealing his position, what right does he have to stay? What right does he have to live? Amnesia? What a joke. He's the one who doesn't want to remember. If I hadn't accidentally seen Old Man Ouyang's test results, this truth would have been hidden forever. It must be Zhou Yuxing's doing. It must be him. He thinks I don't know? Impossible. Gawain was furious. He even has the face to come to me and ask me to give him counseling? That's even more impossible. Isn't he jealous that I took his position? Doesn't he want to be forgiven? Fine. Fine, I'll give it to him. I'll give him my position and let him be the team leader. Every time I give him counseling, I'll hypnotize him. He wants to remember? No way. I'll make sure he doesn't know anything, but can feel everything. That's the best punishment for him. He'll use his entire life to pay for his sins. I'll keep watching, keep watching. Luoqiu looked at the agitated middle-aged man. He placed his hand on Gawain's wrist that was grabbing his collar and slowly removed it. My father can't be perfect, Luoqiu said faintly. He's only perfect when he's my father. He makes mistakes at work and loses his temper in life. Also, my father may be able to be everyone's friend, but that doesn't mean everyone can be his friend. His friends never have the heart to harm others. Gawain's body trembled and his hands fell to his sides in dejection. He looked at Luoqiu dejectedly. You forgive him? My father, he will forgive him. Luoqiu looked at Gawain and said faintly, If I don't forgive him, maybe my father will suddenly jump up and beat me up. Gawain was stunned and didn't say anything. He just turned to look at Luo Qi's tombstone. Can I still come here? My father likes his friends very much. If you want to be his friend, you're welcome to come anytime. Also, thank you for preserving my father's reputation. Luoqiu was already far away. Gawain sighed deeply. Then, he suddenly threw the bottle in his hand away and left dejectedly. In front of the altar on the third floor of the basement, Luoqiu, who had been here many times, sat beside the altar and leaned against it. The altar gave him a colder feeling than before, as though it had turned into a cold machine. He looked at the words floating in front of him. Resurrect Luo Qi. Luoqiu's memories of Luo Qi must be erased. At the same time, all memories of Luoqiu must be erased. All emotions of the executor must be erased. If you want to inherit a tool, you must bear its weight. The executor does not need any extra emotions. Chapter 1193. Luoqiu didn't think about it anymore and carefully hid his thoughts in his heart. He felt that the altar at this time seemed to be missing something, and it was too rigid. He didn't know if the previous boss could do the same thing as the previous boss. But subconsciously, he felt that maybe the current alter was the one that the previous boss encountered. There was no basis for this feeling, it was just a feeling. Leaving the most fragile thing here for the time being, Luocio sorted out his thoughts and opened the door to the third floor of the basement. He didn't feel very relaxed, but it didn't seem to be heavy either. He just returned to normal. When he came back, Luocio didn't see Taisetsu. Yuyi said that she had chosen a place to live in Britain. It was a nice manor, but it was a bit deserted. So she arranged for Taisetsu to go there and clean the manor first. Nero also came with him. This was tantamount to saving Miss Nero from the horrible hell of copying book. Out of the 270,000 times of punishment, Miss Nero had not copied 3,000 times so far. The maid's code was really too long. Although the quill pen used for copying would not be worn out, Miss Nero would still use it until her hand cramped. So she happily accepted this task. She was so happy that she didn't calm down before leaving. If it weren't for Miss Maid beside her, she probably would have asked for trouble and discussed with the boss whether she could be his mistress. The shop quieted down at once. Luocio had taken back those evil soul seals that he traded from the rich woman Su Zijuan during the Mount Tai incident. He also sacrificed some of them. The life that was originally under the red line had already been restored, and it even far exceeded the standard before his trip to South America. It could be said that there was no pressure at all. Luocio was the boss who was connected to the altar. He didn't have any important mission waiting for him to complete, and there was no big devil waiting for him to fight. Or maybe he was already a big devil to some extent. Suddenly, Luocio had a feeling that he was in his best condition now. Outing. In front of the counter, Miss Maid, who was waiting for her master to come back from the altar space, asked in surprise. Her master was a little different during this time, but now he seemed to have recovered. It's spring. Luocio smiled and said, "Let's go for a walk." Miss Maid absolutely obeyed her master's will, so she nodded. Since they were going on an outing, they naturally had to prepare some food. "Let's make sandwiches at all costs." Boss Luo rolled up his sleeves and revealed a relaxed smile. Therefore, he called Luoya out of the room. The three of them went to the kitchen and made layers of sandwiches. There's no need to continue investigating? Miss Song-ing was originally full of energy today. She planned to find new clues today and confirm the identity of the murderer, even though she and her husband had the same thoughts yesterday. However, he did not expect to receive a call from his grandfather, who had returned to South America early in the morning, saying that the investigation could be terminated. Song-ing naturally had to ask why. Grandfather Song Tianyo's answer was very simple, saying that it was Luocio's request. Although Song Tianyu was very puzzled by Luocio's request, he had been in contact with this elder brother and grandson for a short time. However, in the eyes of Father Song, Luocio was a more reliable person than Song Haoran and Song Ying. Of course, part of the reason was because of Mr. Blind. Mr. Blind once said that Luocio was a noble person. Father Song did not have any intention of currying favor. With the wealth and ability of the Song family today, they did not need to curry favor with anyone. Perhaps they could rely on illusory luck to make the Song family go one step further, but it seemed that it was just icing on the cake. It was not as practical as the loyalty of a descendant of the Song family. This was because the Song family was really too small in number. Therefore, compared to how to develop the Song family, what Father Song wanted to see more was how to make the Song family flourish. Song Haoran seemed hopeless. Young people need to know moderation. As for grandfather, although I am old, my bones are still very strong. It won't be a problem to wait a year or two. The key is to take good care of your body, understand? Song Ying felt that her grandfather seemed to have misunderstood something, but she did not know what on earth could make him misunderstand. So, what on earth happened? She planned to ask Luocio properly what had happened, but when she called, she found that the call could not be connected. Although Luocio's phone was still there, it often could not be connected. In any case, she was a member of Luocio's family, and she did not feel that the signal was bad, right? So angry. She did not know why, but she suddenly felt very angry. Sitting in the back seat of Alpha's car and ending the satellite call with Song Tianyu, the words, "Don't provoke me," were written all over Miss Ying's face. The bodyguard next to him vaguely heard his father's weak voice from the phone, so he fixed his eyes on the street, looking like he was carefully monitoring. He would rather die than say that he had reported to his father that the young master and the young lady stayed in the car for a long time and that Miss Ying's waist was tired afterwards. "Let's go," Song Ying ordered with a displeased expression. "Where are we going?" "Shopping." Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao were still working hard to identify the people who had passed by the alley before and 2 days after the crime. The progress of the investigation in these 2 days was not bad. They had checked 32 people who had more than 50 breaths, but it was a pity that they were all unrelated people. The investigation was still in progress. Sir Ma's investigation was also in progress. Because of the order from the top, all the members of the first and second team were now focusing on the dismembered corpse case. Because of the discovery of Wu Rong's murder case and the combination of the two cases, the workload naturally increased a lot, but the attention of the society decreased. Should they exclaim that this was an era of entertainment to death, or should they feel sad that this was an era of entertainment to death? However, those who were supposed to work overtime still had to work overtime. The entire team had been working non-stop for almost a week now. The one thing that made more progress was that they had finally used a new technology to determine the exact time of death for Wang Liang and Wu Rong. This was all thanks to the help of the new forensic doctor. The investigation of Wang Liang and Wu Rong's WeChat moments had been completed, but the result of the investigation made the case even more confusing. The time of death of Wang Liang and Wu Rong was before the Chinese New Year, which was less than 2 weeks apart. According to the data obtained from the internet company, the places where they logged in on their WeChat moments were all different. That was to say, the dynamic photos were not randomly found or photoshopped, but were actually taken in different places. Compared with the time and place of Wang Liang and Wu Rong, most of the time they were in other places. During this period, the most suspicious person, Zhao Lu, was in the city. How could one person be in 2 places? Under such circumstances, although Sir Ma and Zhou Yuxing were helpless, they could only temporarily withdraw the people who were monitoring Zhao Lu. Zhao Lu was actually under surveillance all the time, but it was done secretly. The people who were responsible for following Zhao Lu were Lin Feng and his companion, Xiao Wang. "Got it, Ma." In the rehabilitation center, Officer Lin turned off the phone and then twisted his stiff neck. Her colleague, Little Wang, asked about the situation. Lin Feng told him the truth, while Xiao Wang stretched and seemed to be relieved. These days they had been investigating Zhao Lu. The deeper the investigation, the more they could understand a person. During these days of following Zhao Lu, they found that this young man was really a person of good character. His academic performance was excellent, and he didn't rely on unorthodox means to get a scholarship from the school. His reputation in the neighborhood was completely that of a good child. Even the security guard downstairs was full of praise when talking about him. Perhaps it could be said that Zhao Lu paid a lot of attention to his own reputation. After all, there were such situations. The more scheming a person was, the more perfect his performance and the better his concealment. However, they had been following Zhao Lu these days, watching him take his sister, Zhang Xiaoqin, in and out of the rehabilitation center. Seeing his care for his sister, that kind of heartfelt affection, Xiao Wang couldn't help but feel a little sad. Only when the investigation was dropped did the two of them feel a sense of relief. Who would want to see this suffering family get worse? Or watch it get a little bit better and then be mercilessly snuffed out? "Do you have money?" Just when they were about to go back, Officer Lin suddenly looked at Xiao Wang and asked. Xiao Wang was stunned, then took out his wallet and glanced at it. There were only 3 grandpa notes and a dozen change left in it. He wanted to ask what Lin Feng wanted to do, but unexpectedly, Officer Lin didn't know whether it was because he had been following Sir Ma for a long time, so he had learned to be thick-skinned. Unexpectedly, Officer Lin grabbed it without saying anything, counted out 3 grandpa notes, and then stuffed the rest of the change back. Then, under Xiao Wang's stunned gaze, Lin Feng stood up and directly walked into the rehabilitation room. Xiao Wang guessed what Lin Feng wanted to do, but he was very sad and angry. Zhao Lu wasn't here. He had to go to school during the day, so he only took time to visit at noon. Now was the time when Zhao Lu came to visit, but he wasn't here now. He was washing the towel, preparing to wipe the sweat for Zhang Xiaoqin. In the room, Zhang Xiaoqin attached to the shelf little by little, slowly moving. But maybe she was too hard on herself, so now her forehead was full of sweat. Or maybe because she was too tired, Zhang Xiaoqin didn't hold firmly and was about to fall down. At this time, someone suddenly grabbed her arm and stabilized her body, so fortunately, she didn't fall down. Zhang Xiaoqin thought that she was lucky. She wanted to say some words of thanks, but when she looked up and saw Lin Feng, who had come to her door that day, she couldn't bring herself to smile. "Take a rest first," Lin Feng said in a low voice. "I'll help you." Zhang Xiaoqin didn't say anything and nodded. Then, with the help of Lin Feng, she slowly walked to the resting place and sat down. Then she looked at Lin Feng in confusion. "You," Lin Feng quickly said, "don't get me wrong, I'm not here for you. I just came here to visit the patient, but I didn't expect to meet you, Miss Zhang." Zhang Xiaoqin nodded dubiously. Lin Feng took a deep breath, then took out the grandpa notes he snatched, put 2 on himself, and directly put them in Zhang Xiaoqin's hand. "This is? Buy some tonics." Lin Feng smiled and said, "Live a good life, when the time comes, it will naturally be better." But, Zhang Xiaoqin wanted to say something, but Lin Feng had already hurriedly said goodbye and walked out of the room. She held hundreds of yuan in her hand, looking at Lin Feng's disappearing back, finally shaking her head. "Sister." Zhao Lu came back with a towel, wiped Zhang Xiaoqin's face, and then asked curiously, "Did someone come here just now?" He saw the cash in Zhang Xiaoqin's hand, and couldn't help but frown. Zhang Xiaoqin asked Zhao Lu to sit down, smiled and said, "I happened to meet a friend and chatted for a while." "Who?" Zhao Lu smiled. "You should thank him, he's a kind-hearted person." Zhang Xiaoqin said, "You don't know him, my former colleague. I haven't contacted him for a long time, I didn't expect to meet him here." Zhao Lu replied, and then looked out of the window in confusion, seeing the 2 figures leaving. He frowned. He turned back and smiled, then squatted down, looking at Zhang Xiaoqin, and said softly, "Let me give you a massage." Zhao Lu, who squatted down, carefully massaged Zhang Xiaoqin's calf, while Zhang Xiaoqin stretched out her hands, gently pinching Zhao Li's shoulders. Zhang Xiaoqin smiled and said, "Look at your shoulders, don't read for too long. No one in our family is nearsighted, only you." Zhao Lu gave a simple and honest smile. The doctor said Zhang Xiaoqin's recovery was very good. When summer came, she should be able to walk naturally. Perhaps it was inconvenient for her to run, but it wouldn't affect her daily life. "I'm not tired." Zhao Lu was full of joy. "If I don't work hard, how can my life get better? Sister, I have to fight for a good life." "Fool." Zhang Xiaoqin reached out and poked Zhao Li's forehead, then rubbed it with her palm and said softly, "All right, let's go to class or we'll be late. I'll massage you for another 5 minutes." Zhao Lu lowered his head again and carefully rubbed the acupoints on Zhang Xiaoqin's calf. Zhao Lu had been studying the massage technique for a long time over the past few days, so he was naturally familiar with it. Zhang Xiaoqin recalled Lin Feng's words. When it was time for her to get better, she would naturally get better. So, she was probably getting better now, right? She looked at the 500 yuan beside her and smiled knowingly. In the afternoon, the students didn't see lecturer Gaowen. The substitute teacher was still the deputy dean. Your teacher Gao took a few days off, so I'll be the substitute teacher for all of you these few days. Don't ask any more. There was a series of whispers in the classroom. Chen Mingming didn't listen. Sitting in the back row, he picked up the book he had planned to finish and began reading it carefully. In fact, he didn't need to come to school anymore, but he was used to finishing everything, so he came. However, the deputy dean's microphone on the podium was a little too loud, so Chen Mingming simply put on his headphones, and his entire world was filled with the sound of musical note. Chapter 1194. The true dragon of the divine land, who had regained her power, naturally would not take trains like the Harmony system to the north in Shangjing City. She did not even want to take a plane because she felt that it was more practical to take a plane. But she was still a Shinryu, so she couldn't be too slow. After entering the capital, Long Shiruo walked into the base of the administration's headquarters with ease. She had the title of one of the top advisors here, and she even had a special office. But over the years, the number of times this office was opened could be counted on one hand. The last time she opened it was more than 10 years ago. The headquarters of the administration had been under construction since the establishment of XIN. Over the years, it had been expanding. Others didn't know, but the staff of the administration who worked here were very clear about how huge the headquarters built under the capital was and how incredible the technology was. The combination of Taoism and science allowed this place to even resist a nuclear explosion when it was fully operational. During the period of Mount Tai's spiritual energy explosion, after receiving the news, a group of core senior officials of XIN were gathered here. But Long Shiruo wasn't interested in seeing the changes in the headquarters over the past 10 years, and she wasn't interested in the new technologies that were constantly displayed here. She wanted to capture this place. No matter how strong it was, as long as it wasn't as strong as the Penglai treasury, it was only a matter of minutes and hours. As long as she stepped on the ground, she was almost invincible. The so-called immortals could also be killed. This is the baby with the ability to be born? In the room, through the special glass mirror, Long Shiruo looked at the other side of the room. At this time, the newborns were placed in several incubators, and she frowned subconsciously. Not to mention the supreme identity of Kelowna Shinryu, just the title of the top advisor of the administration was enough to accompany Long Shiruo. No matter how low the position was, it couldn't be lower than the second-level management staff. In fact, the several people accompanying her were the deputy director of the administration, the 4 national scholars led by Fire Cloud Evil God, and the head of the Research and Development Department, Dr. Zhao. As for why only the deputy director appeared instead of the director, it was naturally because the administration was a special institution. No one was appointed to command it, but it was directly subordinate to the supreme leader of XIN. The deputy director was the highest position in the authority. In a few incubators, a newborn's body was floating in the air. It was sucking its fingers and sleeping. Although the degree of floating was very weak, about a few centimeters high, Long Shiruo's eyesight was good enough to see this distance clearly. She could feel that this was not a Taoist magic or a high-tech gravity-free device, but a strange power that originated from the newborn's body. The baby next to the levitating baby was like a light bulb, emitting a light similar to a tungsten lamp. Of course, it was just a kind of light and did not have any offensive power. As for the other two, they both displayed different abilities. However, these abilities did not seem to be of much use right now, so they could only be considered as minor abilities. Dr. Zhao temporarily called this mutation a brand new evolution of human beings after the spirit energy explosion. He even called these newborns the tinder of new human beings. He speculated that in the future there would be more similar newborns. As for whether there would be adults with abilities in the future, it was unknown. Long Shiruo didn't speak. She was just thinking about something. She was actually thinking about Mo Xiaofei. Mo Xiaofei had a powerful brain development. To put it bluntly, it was a psychic power evolved from a mutated spiritual power. It could be said that it was an acquired ability. There were also the other three national scholars besides Fire Cloud, Evil God. The three national scholars were also people who could use powerful abilities, but this was actually the result of Xian's decades of research. But these newborns were different. Their weak abilities were more like innate abilities, and had nothing to do with the degree of development of their own brains. Besides, these newborns were only a few days old. How could they have developed their brains? What are your plans? Long Shirua looked directly at the deputy director and asked. Fire Cloud Evil God didn't count. Although this guy was also one of the top consultants and personally trained many agents of the administration, he was still a senior employee who volunteered to be a hired thug for the administration. The ones who really made the decisions were these senior civil servants. The deputy director's name was Kwang Jiangwo, which was a name that matched the style of naming in his era. He was around 50 years old. In the Xin Tai system, he was considered a relatively young type. Kwang Jiangwo said seriously, "At present we can only collect these newborns. After all, if they are allowed to grow up in society, it is impossible to estimate the impact it will cause. But considering that if similar situations increase in the future, even we have no way to suppress it. We have to prepare for the worst." Long Shirua frowned. Special bill? Kwang Jiangwo said with his chest out, "This is only the first step to adapt to the worst-case scenario in the future. If there are more and more newborns with abilities, I'm afraid we will have to consider announcing the existence of Transcendent. If that's the case, I suggest you move faster." Long Shirua suddenly said. "What do you mean?" This made Kwang Jiangwo a bit surprised. He originally thought that with Long Shirua's past style, she would likely become an obstacle to the implementation of this bill, so before the bill was passed, she was not notified. After all, if it was Shinryu's tough attitude, the chances of this bill not being passed were relatively high. Humans were strong, but no matter how strong they were still helpless against Kelowna and Shinryu. Long Shirua looked at Fire Cloud Evil God indifferently and sneered. "What, this old man didn't tell you?" Fire Cloud Evil God frowned and cupped his hands. "Master Long Jun, what do you mean?" Long Shirua said, "You only see the abilities of these newborns, but you can't see their physiques? These children are full of spiritual energy, their muscles and bones are clear. If they were placed in the ancient times when spiritual energy had not dried up, they would be the best of the best in cultivation. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Fire Cloud Evil God pondered for a moment, then said solemnly, "You mean Taoism will snatch them?" Long Shirua shook her head. "They won't go so far as to snatch them, but they will still fight for them. I don't need to say that Taoism's talents are declining, and you know it very well. In the end, it's indeed because of the spiritual energy. The thin spiritual energy greatly reduces the chances of producing talents with high aptitude. In the past 100 years, most Taoism's disciples have even shown negative growth. Now, if a large number of children with high aptitudes are born in the world, for the sake of inheritance, do you think Taoism's people won't fight for it?" This Fire Cloud Evil God fell silent. He naturally knew what it meant if he did as the true dragon said. Taoism's decline was not something that happened in a day or two, but now that the spiritual energy was restored, Taoism welcomed a new life. It may not be seen in a short time, but after a few decades, Taoism will probably be revived again. This is just Taoism, it doesn't take into account the situation of the major demon clans. Perhaps the demon clan is another uncontrollable situation. If the new generation joins Taoism, they will be taken in as disciples from a young age. From the beginning, they will be cut off from the world, and when they grow up, they will only be loyal to their own sect. This is completely different from the selection of students sent to the major sects and demon clans by the Administrative Bureau over the years. The latter is controllable, but the former is completely uncontrollable. What does consultant Long mean? Kwang Jangwo heard the meaning behind this, and asked carefully at this time. I don't support either side, Long Shirua directly said, but if anyone makes trouble in the world, hurts the innocent, and destroys the mountains and rivers, I will beat him until he can't take care of himself. Since the spiritual energy has been restored, the destiny of the three parties will be in a confrontation in the future. After Mount Tai, the destiny of the people will change. Whether or not the people will be able to dominate the world will depend on your own efforts. I won't interfere. My fist will only hit the outside. There's still the dregs inside. Kwang Jangwo hurriedly said, Consultant Long, don't worry. After this, we have eliminated some of the changed guys in the team. Over the years, everyone has been more comfortable, and the R&D department has been producing new results. Some people in our team can't see clearly, they are arrogant and separated from the people. Long Shiro waved her hand and said, Don't say these things to me. Huaxia has thousands of years of history, and I can recite it backwards. Do you think I don't know what kind of virtue you have? Kwang Jangwo could only remain silent awkwardly. In the Mount Tai incident, some powerful guys had secretly abused the power of the Administrative Bureau to capture demons, develop them in secret, and conduct experiments. This had caused many powerful demons to be resentful and participate in the tragedy of Mount Tai. It was indeed one of the fuses that led to this disaster. It was just that Xin still pursued a strategy of stability. Bold and decisive actions would only lead to greater shocks. But such a low-key handling obviously made this Shinryu Kelowna very dissatisfied. Lord Dragon King, is the fate of the people really about to change? Fire Cloud Evil God was secretly surprised. This time's spiritual energy explosion completely twisted the fate of the people and demons into a ball. Even I can't distinguish it at the moment. Long Shiro nodded. In fact, it still depended on strength. Fire Cloud was the successor of the Tiger Soul Blade. Sooner or later, he would still have a predestined battle with the Xianyuan Palace. Within Kelowna, not including her, Fire Cloud Evil God could be considered as one of the few peak existences. Because of this, Fire Cloud Evil God was the biggest reliance of the Administrative Bureau. As for that damn profiteer, Long Shirua didn't even count him in. After so many interactions, Kelowna Shinryu really understood this damn profiteer's pettiness. Other than flirting with girls, he didn't care about the suffering of the human world at all. Damn profiteer. Right now, I don't know which girl he has taken a fancy to and is desperately flirting with. So infuriating. On this side, Shinryu Lord's face suddenly became ugly. The people next to him looked at him and felt a chill in their hearts. They didn't know if this Shinryu was still unhappy with the Administrative Bureau for acting first and reporting later. Fire Cloud Evil God could only secretly give State Scholar Bihua a wink. After all, in terms of gender, they were relatively similar, so it would be easier to talk to them. State Scholar Bihua, who was known as Godmother, also understood at this moment. She came forward and said with a smile, Well, the newborn's condition has been checked. Why don't we sit down and have a good chat? Lord Long, I have a few cans of good tea here. Why don't we sit down and drink? Hee, Long Shirua chuckled and directly waved her hand. I don't have time. I still have things to do. Kwang Jangwo hurriedly said, Consultant Long, if I can help. Long Shirua rolled her eyes and said, I'm going to seal the whole Kelowna area. Do you want to come with me? Seal the Kelowna area? Fire Cloud Evil God was stunned, but in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have thought of something. Long Shirua said angrily, I just remembered. So much spiritual energy was spurted out. If I don't seal it in Kelowna area, the barbarians outside will have a free meal. This seemed to be the reason, but why did he feel that her tone was not right? Several students walked out of the office dejectedly. Obviously, they had just been scolded. They even had to write a self-reflection and record demerit. The reason was, bullying a classmate caused a bad influence. Damn, it must be Zhao Lu who made the report. One of the students looked unhappy at this moment. The tall boy who was once interrupted by Zhao Lu leaned against the wall and lit up a cigarette. His companion looked at him. Young Master Feng, how about we teach Zhao Lu a lesson? That coward doesn't have the guts to make the report. Young Master Feng looked very calm. It's someone else who did it. Who is it? He must have eaten a leopard's guts. Young Master Feng sneered. He looked at Zhao Lu and felt that Zhao Lu was a coward, but he looked at his two companions as if they were two idiots. However, idiots also had their advantages, that was, they were obedient. Of course, the more obvious reason was that they were rich. Can't you use your pig brain to think? Young Master Feng poked his forehead. It's already posted on the school forum. How can these teachers not see it? So we're just going to let it go? Young Master Feng sneered. I said, I'll teach this guy a lesson every time I see him. I've been chasing that girl for 2 months and almost got her. This is great, this woman has been avoiding me for the past few days. But Chen Mingming seems to be protecting this guy. The other person frowned and said, but I heard that Chen Mingming is going to drop out and emigrate. Why don't we wait a little longer? Zhao Lu is useless without a backer. It was not that he was used to bullying others, but that most of the students in this university were too outstanding. There were a lot of students with good family backgrounds. Students from ordinary families like Zhao Lu were more rare. No hurry. Young Master Feng sneered. We're good students in this university. How can we bully our classmates? Young Master Feng reached out to fix his companion's collar and patted him. Now you know what to do. Chapter 1195. The location of the University of Political Science and Law was not the only high school. There were many other schools nearby, such as comprehensive universities, music schools, and medical schools. This was a major urban planning in the past 10 years. Let's call it the university town. However, in order to save space, a superstandard library was built in the middle of many schools. Students from nearby schools could borrow books here with their student ID. Of course, the library was almost full. If you wanted to find a good spot, you had to come early. Otherwise, you could only choose the lawn outside the library or the artificial lake. Chen Mingming came here today to return books. The person in charge of registering Chen Mingming was a female student who worked part-time. She was not a student of the University of Political Science and Law, but a comprehensive university nearby. The temporary administrator was called Terra, and she came from the grassland in the north. Terra in Mongolian meant the wilderness. The girl's skin was not rough like those who grew up in a sandstorm. Instead, she had the delicate skin of a Jiangnan girl. She had bright eyes and white teeth. She must have lived in the south for some time. Generous and warm. You're here again. Terra smiled as she watched Chen Mingming take out a few books that were not due yet. You're so fast this time. Chen Mingming nodded and did not say much. He often came to the library to borrow books. Gradually, his impression of Terra deepened. Perhaps it was because the girl had a grassland vibe. You're not borrowing books this time? Terra was handling the returned books. She seemed to be relatively free now, so she planned to chat. No. Chen Mingming shook his head. I don't think I'll have a chance to come here again. Terra stopped what she was doing and showed a puzzled look. Her lips moved slightly as if she wanted to say something. Are you done with the registration? Chen Mingming asked in a low voice. Yes, it's done. Terra nodded. Chen Mingming nodded politely and turned to leave. For some reason, Terra suddenly had an impulse. After Chen Mingming walked a few meters away, she walked around the counter and quickly walked up. What's up? Chen Mingming looked at Terra in surprise. Can I treat you to a meal? Terra smiled and did not hide the expectation and enthusiasm in her eyes. Chen Mingming thought for a moment and then nodded. Class ended early, and there was no second class in the afternoon. Zhao Lu looked at the time. If he could catch the bus at this time, he would be able to reach the rehabilitation center before the rush hour. Therefore, after packing up his books and tools, Zhao Lu lowered his head and left quickly. In fact, in addition to picking up Zhao Shaoqin from the rehabilitation center, Zhao Lu also planned to go to the nearby shopping mall. He had taken a fancy to a dress and planned to give it to his sister as a birthday present. In front of the school gate, Zhao Lu had just taken out his bus card when he suddenly felt someone put their hand on his shoulder. It wasn't one person, but two people at the same time. Zhao Li's expression changed slightly. It was young Master Feng, Dong Xiaofeng and the other two. "You, what do you want to do?" Zhao Li's expression tensed up. "Zhao Lu, do you have time?" Dong Xiaofeng walked up to Zhao Lu from behind. With his hands in his pockets, he smiled and said, "We want to talk to you." "I don't have time." Zhao Lu shook his head. "If you have anything to say it here." Dong Xiaofeng walked forward and patted the hands of his two teammates on Zhao Li's shoulder. "Be polite, Zhao Lu is our classmate." His teammates shrugged and then let go of Zhao Lu. Zhao Lu didn't understand Dong Xiaofeng's intention, but this was the school gate. There were many students coming in and out, so they wouldn't dare to mess around. "I want to treat you to a meal," Dong Xiaofeng said seriously. "Student Zhao Lu, please accept my invitation. Because I want to apologize for what we did to you before." "Apologize?" Zhao Lu was startled, then he frowned and shook his head. "No, as long as you don't harass me, we won't interfere in each other's business. Last time in the equipment room was an accident. I didn't do it on purpose, I'm sorry." He just wanted to keep the peace and live his life in the future. He would continue to study, continue to get good grades, then graduate and find a job to make his life better, so that the smile on his sister's face would stay for a longer time. "Zhao Lu, I sincerely want to apologize to you." Dong Xiaofeng put his hands on Zhao Li's shoulders. "If you accept my invitation, then I can only go to your house to apologize." Zhao Lu frowned immediately. He didn't want to let people disturb his life, especially the family that had become peaceful. He really didn't want to welcome people like Dong Xiaofeng. Dong Xiaofeng sighed. "It's actually like this. The school already knows what we did to you, and they severely criticized us. Even our parents found out, and they scolded us as well. My dad told me that I must apologize to you properly, or I'll be in trouble. You see, I also want to enjoy the school life, and don't want to cause so much trouble. It's just that my old man wants me to do this. He ordered a table full of dishes and insisted that I bring you there personally so that I can apologize to you. I have no choice. You can't really expect me to apologize to you personally, right? I'm begging you, please do me a favor." With that, Dong Xiaofeng took out a wad of cash from his wallet, at least 2,000 or 3,000, and then put it in Zhao Li's hand. "Help? I don't want this money." Zhao Lu shook his head. "Just a meal, right? I told you, Zhao Lu is really a good classmate." Dong Xiaofeng sighed and smiled. "It's just a meal. It won't take long. Don't worry, I promise I won't trouble you after this." "I hope so." Zhao Lu nodded. He didn't want to continue to be entangled with Dong Xiaofeng. If it could be solved, it would be the best. Shihai Restaurant was a restaurant in the campus where students often went to eat. It mainly served Chinese food, but also provided accommodation, but the taste of the dishes here was unanimously praised. Tara took the initiative to find a seat near the window. She enthusiastically sat down and began to order dishes. "Did I order too much?" "It's okay, just order." Chen Mingming smiled. "It's my treat." No, I said it's my treat." Tara shook her head. She put her hands on the table and leaned forward. "Don't underestimate me, I can still afford this meal." Chen Mingming nodded and directly accepted the girl's confidence. "Why do you want to treat me?" He preferred to be more clear about the meaning behind everything. "Because I like you." Tara looked at Chen Mingming. Her bright eyes were like stars. Chen Mingming was quite surprised. Although he had interacted with this girl many times, most of the time, it was about borrowing books and returning books, and occasionally a few words of idle chatter. They didn't even exchange contact information. Chen Mingming didn't continue to ask why. After a moment of silence, he directly said, "Next week, I'm going to emigrate." The girl's bright eyes were suddenly surprised and then confused. She opened her mouth and then laughed. Her eyes began to flicker. She subconsciously looked out of the window and then looked at Chen Mingming. She said with relief, "It's okay. If you don't like me, I won't be hurt. You can just say it." Chen Mingming didn't say anything. He just calmly looked at the girl and watched her gradually panic. Are you serious?" Tara finally realized that this boy who often came to the library to borrow books was not a person who was good at joking. Next Wednesday, 8 o'clock in the evening. Chen Mingming once again gave an accurate time. Tara heaved a sigh of relief and leaned back in her chair. She didn't say anything else. Later, the waiter served all the dishes. Tara didn't eat, but Chen Mingming minded his own business and ate. "You won't be able to find a girlfriend like this." Tara suddenly spat out in a fit of anger. "Aren't you eating? The food won't taste good when it's cold." "I'm not eating. I'm not in the mood." Tara glared. "You'll be punished if you ruin a girl's friendship like this. Tengri will definitely punish you." Chen Mingming said, "This is China. It's not under Tengri Heaven's jurisdiction." Tara shook her head and muttered, "Why would I like you?" Chen Mingming asked curiously, "Why do you like me?" Tara shrugged. The girl was straightforward. "Actually, I don't really like you. I just like you more than others, so I want to try." "Try?" Tara came closer and said mysteriously, "If I say that I'm actually a monster and I want to experience the feeling of human love, would you believe me?" Chen Mingming smiled and gracefully picked a piece of meat for Tara with the chopstick. He put it in her bowl and said slowly, "Do monsters like people who don't understand romance?" Tara said indifferently, "Monsters like to look at faces." Chen Mingming smiled. This monster was really honest. However, in the ancient novels, it was really a combination of a beautiful demon and a handsome lover. Tara said, "Actually, I've noticed you since the first time you entered the library." Chen Mingming almost opened his mouth. Tara leaned on the table and rested her chin on her hand. She looked at Chen Mingming's face. "When I first saw you, you seemed to be looking for someone. However, it's not strange to look for someone in the library. Most of the boys come in to peek at girls. I didn't pay much attention at that time. However, I didn't expect that you weren't peeking at girls, but boys. I was a little curious." Chen Mingming frowned. Tara said to herself, "Of course, it's mainly because of your face. After all, your face is quite good. And I often see it, so I paid more attention to it. Well, I found that you were peeking at a man every time, and it was the same man. Later, you even borrowed the books he had read. Every time he returned a book, you would go back and borrow it." Chen Mingming didn't say anything. He just looked out of the window. Outside the window, several boys were walking in. They were Zhao Lu, Dong Xiaofeng and the others. He just felt a little strange and ignored them. He looked at Tara, and then? Tara moved closer again and asked curiously, "Why don't you tell me honestly, do you like men? If so, I'll feel much better than knowing that you're going abroad." "Really? I just feel that he's a very special person." Chen Mingming shook his head. "I feel that when I see him, I see myself." "See yourself?" Tara blinked. Chen Mingming shook his head. "It's an indescribable feeling. The first time I saw him, it was in the corridor by the river. He was alone, quietly sitting on a chair, looking at the scenery without moving. I always felt that he would bring you into a completely silent world. Loneliness, black and white. Nothing. Actually, I feel that way too." Tara whispered. Chen Mingming looked at her curiously. Tara said, "After all, you often peek at him. I was curious, so I peeked a few times. At first, I felt that he was a bookworm. But later, I don't know why, but I got the feeling you just said. Of course, it's also a high-class phase. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in the mood to look at him. But this guy is too cold. I don't like it. There's nothing in his eyes like an empty shell. As I looked at him, I felt uncomfortable and wanted to comfort him. But I haven't seen him in a long time. It's been a long time. It was indeed a long time. It seemed that he hadn't seen him since the Golden Week last year. Tara suddenly stood up and looked at Chen Mingming. Are you full? Chen Mingming looked at the girl strangely and nodded. He wasn't that hungry. Tara suddenly pulled Chen Mingming's hand. Then let's go. Go where? To find this person. Tara's eyes shined. Aren't you chasing this person? Then let's go find him. And then? There's no then. Tara pulled Chen Mingming up. We'll know when we find him. Anyway, you have nothing to do now, right? Just treat it as spending time with me before going abroad. It was like a horse without a rein, running freely on the grassland. Chen Mingming allowed Tala to pull him along as he followed her footsteps and left the West Sea Inn. The dishes were quite sumptuous. Based on the price of West Sea restaurant, the dishes on the table would cost at least 1,000. For Zhao Luo, this was a very difficult thing to spend. However, he didn't pick up his chopsticks and only frowned. Where's your father? Didn't you say he's coming? Dong Xiaofeng said casually. There's a traffic jam on the way. It'll take a while. It's okay, we can eat first. Zhao Luo looked at the time and shook his head. Then let's wait. Dong Xiaofeng asked the waiter to bring Zhao Luo a cup of Coke and then took a bottle of beer. Zhao Luo, I know you're a good student. You don't drink? This is my toast to you. I'm apologizing to you. Do me the honor? Zhao Luo had to take the Coke and drank it in front of the three people. After that, nothing much happened. Dong Xiaofeng and the other two began to play with their phones out of boredom. Zhao Luo, on the other hand, was gradually getting impatient. He didn't know if it was because of the lack of ventilation in the room, but he felt a little hot. He even felt a bit uncomfortable. Zhao Luo, are you hot? Dong Xiaofeng suddenly raised his head and asked. Zhao Luo nodded subconsciously. Dong Xiaofeng smiled. That's right. Zhao Luo was stunned. He felt dizzy and the Dong Xiaofeng in front of him gradually blurred. Chapter 1196. I'm sorry, we can't disclose students' personal information. If you are really friends, you shouldn't have come here. Facing the staff's puzzled eyes and questions, Tala and Chen Mingming didn't say much. They just said a few words and left in a hurry. Tala said that she was looking for that person, but what she thought of was that she checked that person's registration information in the library and found this school. However, it was convenient for students to freely enter and leave different schools in the university district, so it wasn't difficult for them to find this university's teaching office. Tala boasted when she came here. I'm sorry. I didn't expect that he had dropped out. Chen Mingming shook his head and didn't say anything. This was a very strange thing. It was somewhat out of Chen Mingming's expectation of daily life. Just like the mysterious place he had been to before, it was also full of unexpected feelings. He was a person who planned everything well. He always believed that as long as things were planned well, even if there were errors, they should be controllable. Tala sat down dejectedly on the chair in the corridor of the teaching office building. She said half-jokingly and half-helplessly, Well, you borrowed that person's book and now you can even study abroad. Chen Mingming lowered his head, not knowing what to think. But there was no doubt that Tara was a girl full of whimsical ideas, or rather, she didn't have too many restrictions on her. She squatted in front of Chen Mingming, propping up her chin with both hands and looking up at his lowered face. Like teasing a cat, the squatting Tala stretched out her hand and wanted to poke Chen Mingming's forehead with her finger. But before she succeeded, Chen Mingming had caught her wrist. Tala smiled. You're holding the wrong place. Her hand magically broke away from Chen Mingming's palm, and then her 5 fingers leaned forward and clasped Chen Mingming's fingers. It should be like this. She showed a complacent expression. The delicate feeling from the girl's fingers was very clear, like jade, smooth and cold. But Chen Mingming loosened his palm after a while, and said indifferently, "It's late, let's call it a day." Tala showed a pitiful expression, and then immediately cheered up. "Tomorrow, how about we find him tomorrow?" "How?" Chen Mingming shook his head. Tala smiled and said, "Let's just stroll around. Maybe we'll find one." If he had already dropped out of school and went abroad to study, he wouldn't have stayed here, and they wouldn't have bumped into each other. So there were no ifs. Chen Mingming did not agree. He turned around and casually waved his hand as a rejection. Tala cupped his hands in front of his lips as he looked at Chen Mingming's back. "I'll look for you tomorrow." Chen Mingming didn't mind. If he couldn't afford the library, he wouldn't be able to touch it. Yes, this was controllable. The moment he turned around, a burning sensation made Zhao Lu gradually wake up. The moment he opened his eyes, everything around him seemed hazy. He subconsciously went to look for his glasses. He found them and placed them on the cabinet next to him. After putting on the glasses, Chen Mingming looked around in confusion. There was no doubt that this was a hotel room, and the decoration was very exquisite. The price for a night's stay should not be low, but this was not what he was concerned about. What he cared about was why he was here. When he fell asleep, who brought him to this place, and pain. He felt a burning pain all over his body, and it wasn't just in one place. A trace of panic flashed through Zhao Li's eyes. He hurriedly ran to the bathroom and took off his coat. He turned his back to the mirror and looked at his own back. Red scars. Streaks of red scars had even broken through his skin. They were like red snakes that coiled around his back. Every single one of these scars was the source of a burning pain. Zhao Lu only felt that his head was still very heavy. What happened in the process of him losing consciousness? He couldn't have fallen asleep for no reason. Was it Dong Xiaofeng? Subconsciously, Zhao Lu picked up the phone and opened the social media app. On the way, Dong Xiaofeng used the excuse of leaving the phone with a friend to persuade Zhao Lu to add him as a friend. "What did you do to me?" After sending the message, Zhao Lu held the phone with both hands and stared at the screen. Time passed by. Suddenly, the screen flashed. A photo popped up. In the photo, Zhao Lu saw himself. He instantly felt a chill run down his spine and his face turned pale. In the photo, he was naked and kneeling on the ground. There was a collar around his neck. The collar was connected to a chain and was being held by a woman. The woman was wearing a very revealing leather jacket and a butterfly-shaped mask. Dong Xiaofeng. "You son of a bitch, what did you do to me?" However, before he could finish typing the message, the screen flashed again and again. One photo after another appeared on the screen of Zhao Li's phone. In the photo, Zhao Lu had an intoxicated expression on his face. He was either lying on the ground or lying on the ground, moaning loudly. He was like a tamed pet that was being wantonly toyed with by the queen-like woman. He was unable to continue typing the unfinished message. Zhao Li's hands seemed to have been drained of strength, and he leaned against the wall and slid down to sit down. At this moment, the notifications had stopped. Instead, a video appeared. Zhao Li's hands trembled as he tapped on the video. In the video, the woman's laughter was loud and clear. She waved the whip and lashed Zhao Li's body again and again. "Does it feel good, little puppy? Good, good. Do you want this sister to hit you a few more times?" "Yes. Bark like a dog, bark. Woof, woof, woof." Unbearable images and filthy words, they were not censored. Dong, 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 dong. The other party requested a voice call. Zhao Lu picked up the phone with trembling hands and accepted the call. The anger in his heart made him roar, "Dong Xiaofeng? You son of a bitch! How am I a son of a bitch? This woman must have at least 10,000 yuan to play with. What, is her body not good enough? As a brother, I'm not bad, right? Dong Xiaofeng, what do you want to do?" "Zhao Lu, I won't talk nonsense with you. The people that I, Dong Xiaofeng, want to bully have never resisted. Listen carefully, from now on, you will do whatever I ask you to do. Even if I ask you to strip naked, you better not say no. No way! Think carefully, you are a good student. TSK, if these photos and videos are posted outside. Aya, what do you think those teachers and students who think you are good will think of you? This man is so dirty? I heard that you have an older sister? How about I send some to your sister? Don't worry, there are more shocking things to come. Do you want me to let you have a look first, classmate Zhaolo? How dare you? Zhao Li's eyes were about to burst. Then see if I dare or not. Remember, playing with me is like trying to break an egg against a jade stone. If you break, at most I will be dirty, and it will be clean with a wipe. Before class tomorrow, go to the West District and buy a set of fried dumplings from Huang Shang Lu. Remember, before class. Dong Xiaofeng. Young Master Dong. The other party refuses to communicate with you. The other party refuses to communicate with you. The other party refuses to communicate with you. Zhao Li's hands dropped down at once, and he reached out to grab his hair, his head, and knocked it against the wall. He sat there motionless, as though he had lost his soul, and his eyes were lifeless. But the phone rang again. Zhao Lu twisted his stiff neck and glanced at the phone. It was a call from Zhang Xiaoqin. His eyes lit up at once, and the phone rang a few times before it was connected. Everything was instinctive. Little Lu? What's wrong with you? You haven't come over for so long, did something happen? It was a worried and anxious tone. Zhao Li's heart trembled. He tried to force himself to smile, but the voice that came out of his throat was hoarse. It's nothing, sis, I'm fine. Smile, what's wrong with you? Oh, maybe I just woke up. Zhao Lu took a deep breath carefully. I have an exam in 2 days, so I went to the library to read in the afternoon. Maybe I was too tired, so I fell asleep. I just woke up, and my throat feels a little uncomfortable. Is that so? I told you not to work so hard. Zhang Xiaoqin sighed and said, How about this? I'll let the people from the center help me out, and then I'll take a taxi back. You don't have to come and pick me up, it's too late. No, it's fine, I'll come over now. Zhao Lu quickly got up and looked at the bruises all over his body in the mirror. He gritted his teeth and began to put on his clothes. I'll be there soon, sis, just wait for a while. I'm worried about you being alone. All right, there's no need to rush. I got it. Zhao Lu took a deep breath, dressed neatly, lowered his head and hurried out of the Shihai restaurant. Dong Xiaofeng. Young Master Dong. In the private room of the bar, a beast-like roar came from the phone, and then the call was directly turned off by Dong Xiaofeng. After this, Dong Xiaofeng's 2 teammates burst into laughter. I can already imagine the look on that coward's face when he goes crazy. Too funny, young Master Feng. This move of yours is really amazing. Yes, I reckon that coward must be hiding and crying right now. What's there to cry about? Maybe he's looking at his wonderful display, right now, and I'll take another shot? Ha ha ha. Dong Xiaofeng didn't say anything, and only sneered at the 2 guys who were laughing. Then, he casually picked up a bottle of beer and slowly drank it. His teammates stopped laughing. But young Master Feng, I thought you would post these photos and videos tomorrow. Why, do you really want Zhao Lu to work like a horse for you? Dong Xiaofeng said indifferently, If I post them now, I'll just play with them once. But as long as I have these things, I can play with them however I want for the next few years. Isn't it good to have more toys in school? His teammate said, Isn't it too cheap to just let him buy a fried bun tomorrow? The other teammate slapped his head. Idiot. Young Master Feng wants to woo the beauty of the faculty next door this time, and the bun is for her to eat. If I don't let this coward buy it, are you going to buy it yourself? As he said that, he looked at Dong Xiaofeng and said flatteringly, Young Master Feng, these photos, why don't you send me a few too and let me play with them? If that's the case, young Master Feng, give me a copy too. Dong Xiaofeng gave him a copy. Keep an eye on him, don't cripple him. There's still a long way to go. Got it. Then, the music in the private room started to play, and the few escorts also started to enter the room. "Sister, it's been a long day, I'm tired. Get some water." After washing Zhang Xiaoqin's feet and massaging, Zhao Lu helped Zhang Xiaoqin lie down and covered her with a blanket. Then, he turned off the lights and went out. Don't go to sleep later. If you collapse from exhaustion, I don't know how to take care of you." Zhang Xiaoqin, who was lying on the bed, turned around and looked at Zhao Lu as she reminded him carefully. "I know." Zhao Lu replied softly and closed the door of the room. His smile, his calmness at this moment, he finally couldn't maintain it. Zhao Lu stood in front of Zhang Xiaoqin's room, his palm pressed against the door, slowly sliding down, grabbing, until his knuckles turned white. He stood there for a long time before returning to the room. He took off his clothes, then found some medicine and started to wipe the wounds on his body. The moment the medicine touched the wounds, the burning pain made Zhao Lu clench his teeth. Zhao Li's eyes burst out with terrifying hatred. At this moment, as if something was calling him, he subconsciously raised his head and looked at the top of the wardrobe, the box he stuffed there. He didn't know who sent the thing in the box. Perhaps it was just a prank, or perhaps it was something else, but he didn't dare to casually deal with the thing in the box. His intuition told him that the thing inside the box was real. The description of the silver pistol written on the paper card that he discarded, word by word, emerged clearly in Zhao Li's mind. He stood up abruptly, but his movement was too big that he bumped into the desk. The desk shook and the calendar on the desk fell down. When Zhao Lu saw the number circled in red on the calendar, he immediately sat down dejectedly and calmed himself down. "I can't take the risk." He took a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. When Chen Mingming returned home, no one was there. Unlike Zhou Yuxing's father, Chen Mingming's mother had good achievements in her career. Although his mother and Zhou Yuxing divorced a few months ago, they had been living separately for a long time. They bought the house less than a year ago and spent a lot of money on it in a bustling area. Looking at the situation, his mother probably wouldn't come back tonight. Chen Mingming took a bottle of water from the fridge and returned to his room. He sat in front of his desk, and the events that happened after he met Tara flashed through his mind. He then shook his head and began to tidy up his things. Everything on his table was neatly tidied up. Even the bottle that had been placed on the table had the words on the label facing the edge of the table. Chen Mingming pulled open the drawer and took out a sketchbook. Flipping it open, one of the pages was a sketch he drew in the riverside corridor a few days ago. His drawing skills were good, and it could be said to be a super-realistic style. Chapter 1197. St. Andrews was located in the north of Scotland. The town was named after St. Andrew, the patron saint of Scotland, who was buried there. An old Ford stopped at a manor not far from the town. After that, a group of young men and women got off the car. The car was rented, and the driver drove away slowly. The man and woman looked very young. The man had a gray scarf around his neck, while the woman had dyed her hair short and white. They looked at the entrance of the manor. The manor seemed to have been uninhabited for a long time. The walls were covered with moss, and the iron gate of the gate was mottled with rust. There were no extra buildings nearby. There was only a forest in front of them. The road was winding through the forest, and the North Sea could be seen not far away. Because it was spring, the manor was covered with a thick layer of withered leaves. The smell of the soil mixed with the smell of the sea filled every inch of the land. The girl with short gray hair. Nero yawned and looked into the distance. This place was chosen by Miss Maid. But until she arrived, she found that the area here was beyond her expectation. "It's too big. I heard that it seems to be one of the properties of Miss Yu. The young man with a scarf next to her looked up at a tall tower in the manor. After a while, he sighed. "She's really fucking rich." One of Miss Nero next to him moved her lips slightly when she heard it. How should she put it? although she used to be one of the 12 immortal generals of the Michael Club, and had a lot of activity funds that could be used every year for immortal generals. Improving their strength was the most important thing. She didn't feel much about money, but when she heard the description of one of Miss Nero couldn't help showing a trace of poverty. Taisetsu cheered up. Let's go. The boss should come a few days before the school starts. Miss Yui said that before that we have to clean up this place. Miss Nero curled her lips and yawned. Don't worry, there's still a whole month. I think there's a good place in the town. Shall we go for a drink? Taisetsu didn't mind drinking. I don't mind. Cleaning work isn't that urgent. But can you really do it? I'm just worried that you don't have enough time. Are you done copying the books? Can you not tell me such a sad story? Let's clean up first. Taisetsu smiled, then lifted Nero's collar and dragged her into the manor. The alarm went off at 8 o'clock. Chen Mingming opened his eyes. The curtains were drawn, but the lamp was still on. He sat up straight and pinched the space between his eyebrows. That night, he fell asleep on the table like this. He glanced at the sketchbook, then closed it and put it back into the drawer. After taking a shower, Chen Mingming opened the wardrobe. The clothes inside only had 2 simple colors, and they were plain clothes without any patterns. Black and white were arranged neatly. As usual, after washing up, Chen Mingming began to make breakfast for himself. The slippers placed at the entrance of the living room were untouched. Without knocking on his mother's door, Chen Mingming knew that she didn't come back last night. It wasn't that his mother was indecent, but that she put all her passion into work. At this time, Chen Mingming's phone rang. It was Zhou Yuxing. Zhou Yuxing's voice had a trace of tiredness. About your matter, I took time to discuss it with your mother yesterday. Chen Mingming sat quietly and looked at the clock on the wall opposite him. Listen, you're an adult now. You can choose freely. Even your mother can't force you to do something you don't like. Mingming, did you hear me? Chen Mingming said, you also worked all night last night. Zhou Yuxing was startled and frowned. There's a big case recently. It's very urgent. I'm not the only one working overtime. Chen Mingming said indifferently, have you had breakfast? Not yet. Don't interrupt. This matter can't be done, according to your mother's wishes. Go and eat something. You've been up all night. Eat something liquid. It's good for your stomach. I said don't interrupt. I'm talking to you. Hello. Hello? Chen Mingming clicked on the airplane mode and finished his breakfast bit by bit. Then, he cleaned up, washed the dishes, and put them back in the cupboard after drying them. He went out as usual. Morning. Hi. In front of the entrance of the community, a pretty figure suddenly jumped into Chen Mingming's sight. It was Tala. Chen Mingming looked at the girl in surprise. It was spring and the weather had become much warmer. Today, Tara was wearing a dress. Her legs were straight and wrapped in thick cotton stockings. Then, she wore a white coat and held a cup of coffee in her hand. How did you know I live here? Chen Mingming asked curiously. Tala brushed her bangs and smiled proudly. Didn't I say that I'm a monster? Monsters are omnipotent, don't you know? I said yesterday that I'll look for you today. What do you think? I keep my promise, right? Chen Mingming said indifferently. Did you make a promise? Tala walked forward. The enthusiastic girl naturally held Chen Mingming's arm. I don't have class today. I'll accompany you for a day. Tomorrow, you'll accompany me for a day. Then, I have to work on Saturday and Sunday. Next Monday and Tuesday, I have to study for exams. Chen Mingming opened his mouth and frowned. Tala whispered, I'll accompany you to find that person, and you accompany me on a date. Chen Mingming lowered his head and thought for a while. Where to find him? I've already searched the school. I don't know anything else. You'll have to go to a crowded place. Tala blinked and said, There's a food festival in Dongle Square today. There might be a chance. I'll accompany you. No, I have class. Chen Mingming shook his head. Tala held his arm and walked forward. The girl's voice was unquestionable. You're going abroad. Why do you have class? Come, follow me. I'll make sure you're full. Well, we'll find him. His life was disrupted again. In front of the teaching building. Here's what you want. Zhao Lu turned his head away, but his hands still gave out the thing. There were some beads of sweat on his forehead. In order to get the thing in his hand, he had to get up early and rush for a long time. He ran all the way and barely caught up with the time. Dong Xiaofeng smiled and opened the bag. Not bad. You even brought it with you in a thermal box. You have a bright future. I'll call you if there's anything. With that, Dong Xiaofeng carried the bag and walked up the stairs of the teaching building. Zhao Lu heaved a sigh of relief. He lowered his head and intended to leave. But the other two teammates reached out to stop him. Zhao Lu, don't be in such a hurry. Can you do something for us? Zhao Lu raised his head and said angrily, You don't go too far. You. One of the students raised his mobile phone. The photo on the phone was so irritating that Zhao Li's breathing quickened. He subconsciously wanted to grab it, but the other student grabbed his waist. You. What do you want? The student holding the phone raised his chin, and the student holding Zhao Lu let go of his hand. At the same time, he took out a few stacks of homework from his bag and slapped them on Zhao Li's body. Top student, we need these homework for the next class. Please do it well. What's wrong? You don't want to do it? Take it. Zhao Lu clenched his teeth and held the homework tightly. By the way, the teaching office wants us to write some self-criticism. You'd better write ours and young Master Feng's. The teammate sneered and then patted Zhao Li's face with his phone. Good luck, little puppy. The two left with a smile. In front of the square there was a sea of people. The smell of food was everywhere. Tala was holding 2 skewers in her hand. She was eating with relish. She seemed to have forgotten that Chen Mingming was beside her. Her eyes were excitedly looking back and forth between the stalls. She would only say, Wow, this is delicious. This one looks pretty good too. I can't eat any more. Only then would she say a few words to Chen Mingming. Chen Mingming shook his head. He supported Tala while looking at the stall owner who was cooking. Then he turned around and left the crowd. Perhaps she would not have felt so uncoordinated if she did not suddenly barge in as part of his plan, he thought. To find that person? If Tala did not suddenly think of it, Chen Mingming felt that he would not think in this direction. There was no doubt that he clearly knew that he did care about that person. It was something he yearned for more. Loneliness, desolation, as if she was drifting away from everything. She was like a fairy walking in the human world, silently watching everything that happened around her. That person seemed to have her own world, but this world did not resist the reality. Silence seemed to be only the surface of that person. The deeper level of her inner strength was what attracted Chen Mingming. But since a certain festival last year, he had not seen that person in the library, and Chen Mingming had finished the last book that she read. It was a book about antique porcelain. Suddenly, Chen Mingming felt dizzy. Tiredness came, but it wasn't because he didn't have enough sleep. Chen Mingming's work and rest were very regular. He also mastered exercise and rest very well, so he didn't think that he would have a lack of mental energy. But in the end, he suddenly closed his eyes and fell to the ground. It was reasonable to say that he should have fallen to the ground, but obviously he did not, because a pair of hands caught him. It was a man in a black suit, Wei Zidao. The 47th one. Wei Zidao glanced at Lu Mingho at this time. Lu Mingho nodded, then pointed at a place in the square. In fact, it was the stairwell. They wanted to ask something from Chen Mingming, so they did not want too many people to see. Of course, they did not know who Chen Mingming was, simply because Chen Mingming was one of the more than 50 breaths on the 8 trigrams bronze mirror. Perhaps these 47 could provide some useful information, or perhaps not. As the number of people investigating increased, and they continued to gain nothing, Lu Mingho even began to question whether this fellow with over 50 auras could really provide anything. The two of them quickly helped Chen Mingming into the shopping mall, and then flashed into the back stairwell. Let me do it. Wei Zidao put Chen Mingming on the stairs and said, then reached out his hand and began to check with the instrument. The process was very fast, but the instrument did not show anything. Obviously, if the instrument did not make a mistake, the subject was just an ordinary person. Let's interrogate him, Lu Mingho said directly. Of course, he had high expectations for these 47 targets. It was like a routine work. But at this time, the instrument suddenly jumped. It's a monster aura. Wei Zidao suddenly turned around. This guy has a monster aura, but it's very weak. I almost didn't notice it. He's not a monster. Lu Mingho frowned. Wei Zidao was a new agent, but Lu Mingho was already a middle-level agent. He had dealt with demons many times, and he used to be a temporary disciple of a certain sect. He could tell that most of the demons were demons with his naked eyes. It's strange. Wei Zidao nodded, then took a deep breath and pressed Chen Mingming's forehead with his hand. But at this time, a fierce monster aura suddenly appeared, not from Chen Mingming, but from behind Wei Zidao and Lu Mingho. The reaction of the two was also very fast. Lu Mingho turned around and took out a black metal rod, while Wei Zidao directly pulled out a strange silver and black revolver. What do you want to do to my boyfriend? A voice with a hint of anger was heard. At the same time, the two of them saw a young girl wearing a white coat, Tara. At this moment, the girl had something that surprised the two. Her face was covered with a large amount of black and green tattoos that looked like tattoos, and these tattoos were still increasing. At the same time, the place where Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao were standing, or rather, the entire stairwell, had a huge green halo floating on the ground, walls, and stairs. Lu Mingho exclaimed, "Eagle totem?" The green totem circle formation on the ground showed no signs of disappearing. Tala's eyes turned cold. But at this moment, Lu Mingho took out an identification card from his body. Tara frowned, waved her hand, and all the abnormalities disappeared. She hesitated. "You're from the administration?" Lu Mingho nodded, and at the same time, took out another mirror box and opened it. This was a tool used to identify those Kelowna transcendents who had been registered. Beep beep, search successful. A few lines of words appeared on the small screen. Name, Tara. Race, human/monster hybrid. Occupation, Gerfalcon Witch, high-level monster. Chapter 1198. When Lu Mingho received the notice to come to this city for a mission, he knew that this was definitely not a good job, not because of the case, but because it was the private land of the Shinryu in Kelowna. If it was only the Shinryu, Lu Mingho was not too worried. After all, he was one of the top consultants of the administration. As long as they did not provoke him, it would be fine. But the problem was that there were too many monsters living in this city. The private land of the Shinryu could be said to be the place with the highest proportion of monsters in the city in the country, so if they wandered around here, they might encounter a monster. In fact, Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao had tried to be as careful as possible. When they moved, they tried to avoid the faintly discernible monster aura. But in the end, they still encountered a monster. Moreover, it was a high-level monster and a witch. The offspring of a human and a monster could be very powerful at birth, or they could be powerless because of the imbalance of the bloodlines on both sides. Mixed blood would lead to two extremes. Obviously, the Witch of the Gerfalcon was the type with great power. In the face of a high-level monster, the administration usually needed at least 3 fully armed high-level agents to deal with it. What's more, Tara was a witch. A drop of cold sweat gradually fell down. Lu Mingho was glad that Tara seemed to be the type who was easy to talk to. At least, after proving their identity, she did not take any further action. What did my friend do? Those strange tattoos had disappeared. Tara was no different from an ordinary young girl at this moment, but there was still a trace of displeasure in her voice. Friend? Isn't he her boyfriend? Wei Zidao subconsciously looked back at Chen Mingming and waited for Lu Mingho's action. This would determine what Wei Zidao would do next. At this time, Lu Mingho took back the metal long whip and smiled. Miss Tara, it's an honor to meet you. In our archives, Miss Tara's record is good. You haven't answered my question. Tara frowned. Lu Mingho waved his hand at this time, and Wei Zidao put down the special revolver that could shoot Taoist bullet. He then briefly explained the cause and effect. This is what happened, Miss Tara. Your friend happened to be in the scent that we were tracking. Therefore, we are just doing our job impartially. Tala was still frowning. After a while, he shook his head and said, I've known him for almost a year. He's just an ordinary person. I can guarantee that. According to what you said, the murderer has the ability, so naturally, it can't be him. There are so many demons in this city. If you don't investigate, aren't you putting the cart before the horse? We also want to investigate, but this time, only he and Wei Zidao were here, and Wei Zidao was still a rookie. 2 middle-level and low-level agents of the administration, in a place like this, which was like a monster's base, they might offend some big boss hiding here. What should they do? In fact, after seeing the body in the detention center, Lu Mingho had the idea of closing the case. Anyway, it was only a villain who died. There was really no need to waste the authorities' resources. Moreover, there were thousands of similar cases where a transcendent was suspected to have seen injustice. The Bureau had accumulated thousands of such cases over the years. If it wasn't for Chang Zhao's death, the two of them would have closed the case and returned to report on their mission. Since Miss Tala is the guarantor, there's naturally no problem. Lu Mingho quickly nodded. I'm sorry about today's matter, but Miss Tala, don't worry. Your friend is just asleep. After all, we're just investigating, and we won't casually harm the safety of citizens. Tala nodded. The relationship between the Transcendent and the administration was quite subtle. Both sides were trying to avoid conflict as much as possible. Sorry to bother you, Miss Tala. Lu Mingho and Wei Zidao began to pack up their tools and prepared to leave. Wait a minute. Tala suddenly said at this moment, leave your contact information. Tala shrugged and said, aren't you investigating a case? If I have any clues, I can inform you. Didn't you say that assisting the administration with cases can increase the freedom of the demon race citizens? I want to travel to the Sichuan area this summer. Let me tell you, I've almost earned enough points for a visa. Okay. In the administration, there were indeed regulations governing the residence of demons. Under normal circumstances, when a demon chose to live in a certain place, they couldn't leave casually. As for going out, it was even more necessary to register and file. Although there were such regulations, there were many people who didn't abide by them secretly. Lu Mingho didn't expect that this powerful mixed-blood demon was actually a law-abiding guy. After leaving their contact information, they quickly left. But Brother Hao, it's a pity. If we were a little tougher, we should be able to interrogate that young man, right? Wei Zidao couldn't help but sigh at this time. Lu Mingho said, Tala seems to be very concerned about this young man. It's not worthwhile to offend her. It's not that we're afraid of her strength, but her identity is more sensitive. Sensitive? Wei Zidao was puzzled. Why? Lu Mingho said seriously, she's a witch, and she's a witch of the Gerfalcon tribe. The eagle totem can be said to be one of the 3 great totems of the grassland. In the grassland, it's not like the inland area. The people there have always believed in totems since ancient times. If she's the spiritual leader of a tribe, it's not a small problem. This tribe didn't refer to the demon race, but the people living in the grassland. Perhaps their population was not large, but they were still legal citizens. All right. Wei Zidao nodded, and then opened the Bagua mirror. There are still 7 or 8 guys to be investigated. Let's try to finish it today. Lu Mingho thought for a while and said, if there's still no result, we have to think of another way. When Chen Mingming opened his eyes, what came into his sight was the girl's face under the light. Chen Mingming frowned in confusion. At this time, he was lying on a bench and pillowed on Tala's thigh. The surroundings were relatively quiet. They were not in the square where the food festival was held, but in the rest area behind the square. Chen Mingming wanted to sit up, but Tala pressed his body down and covered his eyes with her palm. The girl's soft voice sounded in Chen Mingming's ears. Lie down for a while, it's good for you. You suddenly fainted just now, maybe you're not in good health. From the soft palm, there seemed to be a warm feeling, covering Chen Mingming's eyelids. His dizzy and swollen head seemed to be relieved a little. Do you feel better? Tala asked softly. Yes. Chen Mingming answered subconsciously. Do you want to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation? Tala's unexpected behavior appeared in front of Chen Mingming once again. Chen Mingming reached out and pressed on Tala's palm that was covering his eyes, and at the same time covered his lip. Hello? Tala lowered her head, and her hair fell down. Yes? Chen Mingming answered softly. Tala smiled and said, Actually, you want me to kiss you, right? Chen Mingming said a joke that was not very funny. Humans have evolved for so long, but I haven't evolved into an animal with the lower body. I guess I've lowered the standard, I'm sorry. Tala still covered Chen Mingming's eyes with her hand, but her voice was getting closer and closer, as if he could feel her breath. Kissing, most of the time, is not necessarily because of sex. It's very likely that you want to be touched, to be acknowledged, and to be known by others. Why? Chen Mingming asked calmly. Tala smiled and said, Because I'm a monster, so I can touch the human's heart. You must be very lonely. She moved her palm little by little to Chen Mingming's lips, and he could see Tala's face clearly again. She was so close, and the sunlight shone on her jade-like face. She finally kissed him. She only kissed him through her palm. At that moment, Chen Mingming was a little flustered, and he could not keep calm. Tala raised her head proudly, looked at him, and giggled. Deliberately imitating doesn't mean you can do it. Even if you can understand other people's thoughts, you can't stay in the same world as that person. From the very beginning, you and that person are two separate entities. Chen Mingming opened his mouth slightly. Tala whispered, I can see in that person's eyes, besides loneliness, there's also longing. But you don't have it. Chen Mingming frowned. Tala said, You can't even see yourself clearly. How can you see people's hearts clearly? Chen Mingming laughed, covered his eyes with his hand, and whispered, Let me rest for a while. Tala reached out and stroked Chen Mingming's head and coaxed him, Good boy. When he woke up again, Tala was gone, but there was a note in his hand which was left by Tala. I'll go first. Unknowingly, it was already late. Chen Mingming didn't expect that he could sleep for such a long time. Tala didn't leave any more information for him, which gave Chen Mingming a very free and easy feeling. Sitting up, Chen Mingming didn't leave immediately, but quietly thought about something. There were fewer and fewer people in the rest area now. Most of them went to the mall to eat or to go shopping. Until the sky was getting darker and darker, and the lights were on. Chen Mingming closed his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, there was a person sitting beside him. A person who sold him the silver pistol, Luochio. He just came out of nowhere. Maybe it was because of the call in his heart. Have I seen you somewhere before? Chen Mingming frowned. When we first met, I had this feeling, very vague. Luochio smiled. Many times, when we see others, we will have a feeling of déjà vu, Chen Mingming subconsciously said. You mean, déjà vu phenomenon? Luochio smiled and said softly, Customer, is there anything you need from me? Try. Chen Mingming thought for a while. Just like how I inexplicably went to your place, is there any other way to make you appear? For example, you giving away the gun, is that also an attempt? You really know. Chen Mingming nodded, however, since I have obtained an unknown item, shouldn't I first find out its truth? That's right. Luochio smiled. Since the contract has been signed, the item is yours to use. Of course, how you use it is up to you. Chen Mingming looked at Luochio and suddenly asked, Do you think he will use it? Luochio asked back. Giving and using are often tied together. Customer, before giving it away, didn't you already think about it? Chen Mingming shook his head. No, I just gave him 2 options. 2 options, huh? Luoqiu looked at Chen Mingming and suddenly smiled. You and I are somewhat similar in the past, but not completely. Chen Mingming frowned. How about this? Luoqiu smiled and said. Let's make a bet on whether or not you will fire this gun. What do you think? Bet? Luoqiu nodded and said, previously, there was a customer who made a bet with me. Of course, the bet was on something else. The result? There are winners and losers, Luoqiu smiled and said. Of course, customer can also choose not to participate. This is just a temporary project, something I did on a whim. Maybe I will change my mind in the next moment. What are the stakes? Chen Mingming asked calmly. If you win, I will give you something of the same value as this gun for free. Luoqiu said indifferently, but if you lose, our contract will skip the last part. What do you think? In that case, I refuse. Chen Mingming shook his head. Luoqiu said, is it because the conditions are not attractive enough? If that's the case, I can give you a higher value. Double, triple, or even more. Chen Mingming still shook his head. Since there is a probability of winning or losing, there is no absolute win or loss. I don't like things that are out of my control. Besides, you can afford to lose, but I may not be able to. You are really a careful person. Luoqiu smiled and then stood up. If there is nothing else, please allow me to leave. Dear customer, I am very happy to have this meeting with you. Chen Mingming sighed inwardly in this so-called meeting. He was completely on the side of being led. I am also very happy to have this meeting. Chen Mingming nodded. Before Luoqiu left, he suddenly asked, if this bet starts, which side will you choose? To open or not to open? Luoqiu said indifferently, I will choose the side you chose. Looking at Luoqiu gradually disappearing, Chen Mingming's eyes did not blink. After a long time, he slowly sighed and muttered to himself, completely at a disadvantage. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. The beautiful girl smiled sweetly, then turned around and walked into a dance studio. Dong Xiaofeng withdrew his hand from the window and closed the window. The 2 teammates sitting in the back laughed strangely. Hee, young Master Feng, I think this girl will fall in a few days. Dong Xiaofeng looked back and said indifferently, you drive, I will sit in the back. Okay. Although this was not a top luxury car, there were few students who could afford to drive such a car that cost hundreds of thousands. At least this was a car that his teammates could not afford. The 2 quickly got off the car and exchanged seat. When Dong Xiaofeng just sat down, the other teammates suddenly glanced at the back of the car. Young Master Feng, that seems to be your mother? Dong Xiaofeng frowned and turned around to take a look. In front of a branded clothing store not far away, a handsome and tall young man was holding a charming woman, talking and laughing as they walked out. They were so intimate that they acted as if there was no one else around. Drive. Dong Xiaofeng withdrew his gaze and said expressionlessly. Chapter 1199. Like a heat wave, it was like a loudspeaker that could move one's skin. Wave after wave, it made one's heart beat wildly. The psychedelic lights, the sounds of revelry, the wine glasses stacked into a pyramid, and the blue flames burning on the wine glasses. In addition to the 2 teammates, there were 2 other boys and several girls, swaying in front of the ring-shaped big booth. There were many bottles of wine placed on the table. Dong Xiaofeng held a bottle in his hand and drank almost all of it. He was like an outsider, looking at the crazy people in front of him. As for the people who began to kiss passionately, he just looked at them expressionlessly. At this time, a gorgeous girl wriggled to Dong Xiaofeng's side like a water snake and kissed his ear passionately. She moved all the way down, provoking him to her heart's content. Dong Xiaofeng lowered his head and looked at the lustful expression on the girl's face. It was as if he saw maggots crawling all over her face. Her face began to rot, and it was extremely ugly. But this was not real, it was just his feeling. The girl's face was delicate, and her figure was also the best among this group of girls. She was a stunner. Finally, the girl was not satisfied with this little teasing. She raised her head and held Dong Xiaofeng's face with both hands. She slowly moved closer, obviously wanting a passionate kiss. Go away. Perhaps because the music was too loud, or because the heat wave in her body almost destroyed her rationality, or maybe because of other reasons, the girl was surprised for a moment and continued her next move. Go away. In the end, she heard it clearly. Then she frowned, snorted coldly and left, because this man's eyes were really cold. After the girl left, the teammate walked over and sat down in confusion. Young Master Feng, what happened? Did she make you unhappy? You guys have fun. Dong Xiaofeng directly stood up and took a bottle of beer that he had just opened and not drunk. I've paid the bill. Young Master Feng? Young Master Feng. What the hell? They saw Dong Xiaofeng suddenly walked into the revelry young people, but in a moment, his back was out of sight. Another teammate curiously asked, what happened? Who cares, it's not the first time. Let's continue. It's good to be young. If you don't have sex, you won't know your health. The silver Mercedes-Benz SLC ran all the way along the road by the river. When the roaring engine passed the bridge above, it suddenly reached its loudest sound and then came to a sudden stop. Walking to the railing by the river, the damp and cold wind made Dong Xiaofeng feel comfortable all over. His tolerance for alcohol, which had been honed by working in nightclubs for a long time, didn't make him unable to walk due to drinking too much. He just felt hot. He looked at the other side of the river. Most of the buildings were old. He remembered that when he was in elementary school, the place where he lived was right across the river. The lights on that side were the lights of thousands of homes, while the lights on this side were the cold neon lights of a luxurious life. It was hard to say which side was better. Perhaps, only when both of them were looking at the opposite side would they have a trace of longing. Dong Xiaofeng heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he took out his mobile phone and tapped on the chat interface of the person called Zhao Lu. He began to type. Are you asleep? What are you trying to do? Now go outside your house and start frog hopping from downstairs. Then film it for me to see. You're crazy. I'll wait for 5 minutes. Start the countdown. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Dong Xiaofeng didn't even blink his eyes. He just stared at the screen and gradually became lost in thought. Finally, the mobile phone suddenly vibrated. The screen began to refresh one short video after another. Although the light was dim and the camera kept shaking, the person who was caught was already frog-hopping down the stairs of his house. Even the sound of breathing could be heard. Video after video, Dong Xiaofeng leaned against the railing, allowing the cold wind to blow as he drank his wine one mouthful after another. Finished. Gymnastics. What? Broadcast gymnastics, set 15 or continue frog-hopping downstairs. Soon after, a new short video was sent. This time, he didn't even open it. He just looked up at the dark sky. How disgusting. Zhao Lu was like that, and so was he. Thinking of this, he threw the bottle out and got into the car. Before driving, he sent a message. Good night. Xiaofeng, you're back. A charming woman hurried over, her face full of concern. Why do you smell like alcohol? Where did you go crazy? Dong Xiaofeng looked at his mother and then at the man sitting in the living room, reading the newspaper. His father. It's so late, what's the matter? Dong Xiaofeng casually replied. What's with your attitude? Finally, the middle-aged man who was holding the newspaper put down his hand and looked over. He was full of dignity. You don't learn good things all day. You only know how to spend money. Is my money for you to raise flowers? Forget it, the child is still young. Don't be angry. You can educate him slowly. The woman said gently. Every time I say it, you only know how to tie him up. Too kind a mother, too bad a son. Dong Xiaofeng's father snorted. From today onwards, you won't have pocket money for 3 months. Dong Xiaofeng looked at all of this expressionlessly. Ah, that's disgusting. They are. Me too. Dong Xiaofeng's mother walked to the man's side, sat down, and patted him on the shoulder. Calm down. The child is still young and doesn't know how to behave. Stop it. You only know how to help each time. It's all your fault. Don't you feel tired? Yes, it's my fault. Are you awake? Dong Xiaofeng's mother shook her head. Isn't it tiring? Dong Xiaofeng's father sighed and glared at Dong Xiaofeng. Hurry up and take a shower. You smell like alcohol. Do you look good? I know. Dong Xiaofeng didn't say anything. He nodded casually and walked to the stairs. By the way, Xiaofeng, your birthday is the day after tomorrow. I've discussed it with your father. Let's fly to Paris tomorrow night and celebrate your birthday. Dong Xiaofeng's mother said with a smile. Look, your father still cares about you. He even took 2 days off from the company. Enough. Dong Xiaofeng finally stopped and turned around. That's enough. Stop acting. What did you say? Dong Xiaofeng's father immediately frowned. Dong Xiaofeng sneered. If you want to teach me a lesson, fine. But first, deal with your mistress. Mom, before you become a loving mother, please don't hang out with your boyfriend all day long. Don't you have it hard? I bet you feel disgusted when you touch each other now, right? Dong Xiaofeng didn't go back to his room and went out again. Stop. Where are you going? Dong Xiaofeng's father said angrily. Dong Xiaofeng waved his hand and didn't turn back. To squander. After the door closed, Dong Xiaofeng grabbed his teacup and threw it on the ground. Then, he looked coldly at the woman sitting on the sofa. In that case, I won't go to Paris. I'll fly to Sabah in 2 days for a vacation. The woman stood up and said casually. Dong Xiaofeng's father said coldly, Up to you. But you better watch your behavior. The company is going to be listed. I don't want any bad rumors. Take care of yourself first. The woman sneered and went upstairs. When opening the door, Zhao Lu tried to be careful not to make any noise, but the light in the living room suddenly turned on. Zhao Lu was startled. He saw Zhang Xiaoqin sitting in a wheelchair at the place where the light was on. Xiao Lu, it's so late. What did you do? Why are you sweating all over? Nothing. Zhao Lu turned around and closed the door. After adjusting his emotions, he turned around and said with a smile, I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs to run for a while. He quickly took a blanket from the sofa and walked to Zhang Xiaoqin's side and put it on her. Sister, didn't you fall asleep? Zhang Xiaoqin shook her head and suddenly grabbed Zhao Li's hand. Xiao Lu, I just had a dream. I woke up. Dream. Zhao Lu was stunned. Then, he squatted down and grabbed Zhang Xiaoqin's hands. Her palms were a little cold. He started to rub them. What dream? I don't know. I don't even know where I am. Zhang Xiaoqin shook her head and seemed to be a little scared. Only you and me were left. Then you walked in front of me with your back facing me. You walked further and further away. I called you, but you didn't hear me. You just kept walking. I couldn't walk anymore and couldn't catch up with you. Then you disappeared and I woke up. Am I not here? Zhao Lu grabbed his sister's hand and put it on his face. How could I disappear? Do you think I can cast a spell? Don't worry, it's just a dream. Nightmares are not real. You're right. Zhao Xiaoqin smiled and pinched Zhao Li's face. Zhao Lu said, Sister, are you hungry? Let me make you something to eat. Are you trying to make me fat? I don't want to eat. Zhang Xiaoqin glared at him and complained, I'm either sitting or lying down every day. Look at the circles on my belly. Sister, you have a great figure. Zhao Lu smiled and said, Didn't I go for treatment every day? Whatever fat I have will be burned. I'm burning my calories. PFFF. I made some onion oil and some oil residue. How about making onion oil noodles? Zhao Lu winked. Zhang Xiaoqin struggled with a painful expression. She pinched Zhao Li's face with both hands and pulled, Do you really want to die? If you don't want to eat, I won't make it. Zhao Lu smiled evilly. You're courting death. Zhao Shaoqin was so angry that she wanted to hit him. Zhao Lu quickly stood up and ran to the fridge with a smile. It'll be ready in 10 minutes. Sister, wait for me. Damn brat, put more onion oil. Zhang Shaoqin glared at him. Seeing Zhao Lu start to get busy, she laughed and said jokingly, if I get fat and no one wants me, I won't be able to get married. Then you deserve to be my cook for the rest of my life. Zhao Lu smiled, took out the noodles and put them into the pot. When he started to cook the noodles, it was steaming hot. They began to whisper to each other. They talked about the time when they went to catch crickets when they were young. They talked about the time when they stole watermelons from the neighbor. They talked about the time when they liked to watch Ultraman and Sailor Moon. They talked about the time when Zhang Shaoqin grabbed the remote control of the TV and hugged it tightly. They talked about the time when Zhao Lu snatched her drumstick and made her cry. They talked about the past and the future. They were all beautiful things. The light in the living room was on, but it was only the wall lamp and the table lamp. When he opened the door, Chen Mingming noticed it, so his action was a bit gentler. A woman in a suit was lying on the sofa. The table was full of documents. The woman was holding a document in her hand, but she had fallen asleep. Chen Mingming didn't say anything. He just went to the kitchen to get some ginseng slices, soaked it in water, and brought it to the woman's side. He put it on the table and tidied up the scattered document. Your dad came. The woman lying on the sofa didn't open her eyes. She just pinched her eyebrows and said tiredly, Got it. Chen Mingming picked up the ashtray on the table and poured out the cigarette butt. If your dad comes to you these 2 days, don't talk to him. The woman said at this time. Chen Mingming nodded. After putting away the ashtray, he looked at the tidy living room and took a bottle of water from the fridge. The woman asked again, Have you packed up everything? He will leave next week and won't come back this year. Pack up carefully, or it will be hard to find him. We'll talk about it later. Chen Mingming answered casually and walked to the room. The woman opened her eyes at this time and called, Mingming, Uncle Kai is a very good person. He also has his own business in Canada. Besides cooperating with him, Mom also plans to reorganize the family with him. He is also very willing to accept you. After you go there, communicate with Uncle Kai more. Do you understand? Chen Mingming turned around and looked at his mother, saying softly, It's late, go to bed early. The woman nodded and said with a smile, You've grown up. You know what's good for yourself. Mom always believes in you. Remember to drink the ginseng tea. Chen Mingming replied and walked into the room. After closing the door, there was almost no sound. Chen Mingming sat back at his desk and glanced at his phone. There were a few short messages from Zhou Yuxing. After glancing at them casually, he put the phone back on the charger. It's still too quiet. Let's make some sound, whatever. He put on his headphones and leaned over the desk. Include me out. Where have I seen this before? When can I feel it again? Someone open the door. I'm scared to go in. Imagination erases everything. If imagination continues. I saw it in a book. In an open book. I saw it in a joke book. Chapter 1200. Curse the Haunted House? What's that? In the school's cafeteria, of course, even the cafeteria was divided into several levels. The commoners' cafeteria on the first floor was 10 yuan, and there were even cheaper ones. Then there were the cafeterias on the second and third floors. In a private room near the window, his teammate mysteriously opened a web page in front of Dong Xiaofeng with his phone. What entered his eyes was a pixel pattern that looked like the interface of a horror game from the last century. Because of the low pixel, he could only see the outline of the website. Even so, Dong Xiaofeng still felt a chill in his heart. The four sides of the screen were dark, and in the middle was a doll with bangs wearing a Gothic-style dress. It held a knife in its hand, and on its face was a creepy and bloody smile. The background was a total lunar eclipse, emitting a dark red halo. His teammate's name was Ah Chong. Seeing Dong Xiaofeng's interest, he poked his head out. Someone introduced this to me. They said it's very effective. The owner of the haunted house can help you curse anyone you want. The teammate beside him was stunned. His name was Ming Zhen. His surname was Ming and his name was Zhen. He was usually called Ah Zhen out of habit. Ah Chang and Ah Zhen had always been Dong Xiaofeng's teammates in school. In fact, Ah Zhen and Ah Chang had known each other since they were young. On a starry night, they became good friends. Dong Xiaofeng casually glanced at the website of the so-called cursed house and shook his head. He looked at Ah Chang and said indifferently, "If it weren't for the fact that the school reserved some degrees for local students, and if it weren't for the fact that your boss opened a processing plant and donated a lot of money, I really don't understand how a wise and far-sighted person like you could come to school here." No, young Master Feng, the point is, whether I can do it or not, what's important is that I'm already online, okay? Dong Xiaofeng rolled his eyes. Go play by yourself. Shaking his head, Dong Xiaofeng got up and left his seat. Usually, at this time, he would choose to take a nap in the gymnasium's lounge. He was a member of the school's basketball team. Just try it. It's not like you'll lose anything. Ah Chang ignored Dong Xiaofeng's disdain and grabbed his phone to study it. Ah Chang, let me have a look. Ah Zhen sat down. Don't come so close. It's hot. Today, Dong Xiaofeng didn't go to the place where he usually took his afternoon nap. Instead, he went to the self-study room, next to a vending machine outside the self-study room. A beautiful girl was being hugged and kissed by Dong Xiaofeng. Admittedly, Dong Xiaofeng, who had a lot of experience, easily teased the girl to the point where she was a little delirious. Especially in this kind of semi-secret and semi-public place, the stimulation that could be easily discovered made a girl's already sensitive parts even more sensitive. Unlike the passion of a girl, under Dong Xiaofeng's skillful technique, there was not a single ripple in his heart. Finally, the girl gasped for breath and separated from Dong Xiaofeng's lips. Her body seemed to have softened as she pressed herself against Dong Xiaofeng's chest. "You're so bad, deliberately picking this kind of place," the girl said coquettishly. "You don't usually come here." However, perhaps he could enjoy the peace after this kind of tenderness. After all, it was a self-study room and the surroundings were very quiet, but suddenly, a burst of singing broke the silence. The girl stuck her head out of the vending machine and looked at the self-study room a few meters away. Through the glass, she could see that in the self-study room, there was a thin boy with glasses. At this time, for some reason, he stood on the table and began to sing at the top of his voice, dancing and dancing. Is this person too stressed? The girl just felt curious. Only then did Dong Xiaofeng smile faintly. This was the first time he smiled since he started dating this girl here. It seemed that being intimate with this department belle, who was envied by others, was not as important as what was happening in the self-study room at this time. He put the phone back into his pocket and then whispered something in the girl's ear. The girl slightly lowered her head and nodded. While the man and woman in the vending machine quietly left, the boy with glasses who was shouting at the top of his voice in the self-study room suddenly jumped down, then lowered his head and went back to his seat. Under the surprised eyes of others, he casually tidied up his things, then rushed out with his school bag in his arms and lowered his head. There were no teachers in the self-study room of the university. Well, it was just an interlude, and no one cared too much about it. Maybe it was really because of the great pressure? Some people chose to study in the self-study room, while others chose to study in the library. Some chose to study in the sofa area in the library, while others chose to study in the grassland by the artificial lake outside the library. "What are you drawing?" A very distinctive voice. Tala's voice suddenly sounded behind Chen Mingming, followed by a cold feeling against Chen Mingming's neck. Chen Mingming frowned subconsciously. This girl seemed to always be able to find him unexpectedly. He didn't take the mineral water that Tala put on his neck as a prank. However, Tala sat down next to Chen Mingming, and then directly took his notebook from his hand. It was a sketch drawn with a blue ballpoint pen, and it seemed to be almost finished. You're going to be possessed by the devil. Tala only took a glance, then held her chest with pity. You have such an excellent girl beside you. You actually drew a man. Pun intended. No pun intended. Tala stared back. Chen Mingming smiled and asked curiously, Today, where are you going to take me to find her? Tala pouted and thought for a moment, then suddenly narrowed her eyes, and then directly pulled Chen Mingming's body down and put him on her legs. In a dream. Not knowing why, Chen Mingming felt that he didn't resist such contact, not because of the softness of the girl's legs or the smell of her body, but because time seemed to slow down, and it was easy to feel tired, as if lying on the grassland under the blue sky and white clouds, as if he could really see the blue sky. However, a message notification suddenly broke the silence at this moment. Chen Mingming's heavy eyelids suddenly opened, and he took a look at the phone. Tala took another glance, and it seemed to be an ID with a blank avatar. At the same time, she realized that the social app on Chen Mingming's phone was really clean. After reading the message, Chen Mingming deleted it and let the interface return to blank. Tala then realized that it wasn't always so clean, but he had been keeping it clean. Why did you delete it? Is there a secret that you can't let others know? Tala said jokingly, Don't tell me you have another woman? A friend. Chen Mingming said indifferently, She wants to ask something. Then why didn't you reply? No need, Chen Mingming said indifferently. So cold. Tala shook her head, and at the same time reached out to poke Chen Mingming's cheek. However, Chen Mingming's tiredness came again, and he ignored it. Tala suddenly asked, Have you heard of the haunted house of curses? What's that? Chen Mingming's consciousness was blurred, and he gradually fell asleep. Tala looked at Chen Mingming, whose breathing had calmed down, and smiled slightly. She lowered her head, revealing a gentle gaze, and reached out to press on his forehead. An extremely pure and dry spiritual energy began to drift around. On the surface of the lake, blue waves rippled. When Chen Mingming woke up, Tala had disappeared again, just like before. However, when he opened the notebook, he saw that his sketch had been scribbled like a child's, and there was also a cartoon face with its tongue sticking out. At this time, the phone rang. Do you have time in the afternoon? Come out and talk. It was Zhou Yusheng's call. In the station. During the lunch break, Xiao Bao was fighting in the office. Next to him was a bowl of instant noodles that he had just finished. Suddenly, Xiao Bao! The sudden shout gave Xiao Bao a fright. Xiao Bao's hand suddenly trembled. The priest known as the Milk God Xiao Bao in the game was originally planning to cast a single target CC on his teammates, but then he made a mistake in his skill and changed it to magic antibody. As a result, his low HP teammate was instantly chopped to death by the physical monster's machete. Lin Feng, go to hell? Xiao Bao turned around and said angrily, I'm about to clear the first floor of the Lunar Demon King Tower. I fought for nothing. Lunar Demon King Tower? What's that? Lin Feng reached out and touched Xiao Bao's forehead. You don't have a fever? Go away. What do you know? It's the new version now, and everyone is fighting to clear the tower. It's been so many days, and most of them still haven't cleared the first floor. Originally, there was hope today, but I still had to risk being discovered by the new medical examiner Nan. It's all your fault. Xiao Bao said angrily. Don't you have two very powerful friends? Let them carry you. Lin Feng shrugged and sat casually on the table. Xiao Bao stretched and said, Anyway, he had caused the death of the team's MT, and now he was being scolded, so he was too lazy to look at it. They are preparing to break through the 9th floor, so they don't have time. The 9th floor of the Demon King Tower is an area, and we can only reach the next area after destroying the 9th floor of the first zone. I don't understand. Lin Feng yawned. Xiao Bao frowned. Are you very free? Why did you come here? Lin Feng sighed. The dismembered body case is still a mystery. Director Lu lectured Sir Ma and Sir Zhou for more than an hour this morning, and then they came back and lectured us for more than an hour. It's not over yet. Oh, so you came here to take refuge? Xiao Bao poured a glass of water for Lin Feng. Yes, Master Bao, Brother Bao, please help us. Did you find anything new? Lin Feng asked expectantly. Xiao Bao said, we couldn't find any useful clues at the scene. The murderer really destroyed all the traces. It's the first time I've seen such a cautious murderer. Generally speaking, there are two kinds of murderers: conscious murderers and unconscious murderers. Unconscious murderers leave a lot of traces, which is simpler. As for conscious murderers, they must have a thorough plan, so they will purposely clean up the surrounding traces after the murder. But think about it, even if there is a conscious murderers, from the beginning to the end, a period of time must have passed. No matter how careful they are, it's impossible to say that there is no trace of evidence left, unless every step is executed perfectly. But if so, the murderer is really terrible. You see, dismembering a body is a very cruel thing, which shows that the murderer's mind is very twisted. But the scene is so clean, which shows that the murderer is a calm person. Come and have a look. Saying this, Xiao Bao logged out of the game with tears, and then began to check the files. These are the photos I took at the scene of Wang Liang and Wu Rong's death. Look at these photos, what do you think? One photo after another began to flash through Lin Feng's eyes. The shoe cabinet at the entrance, the living room, the bedroom, the kitchen, the bathroom, and the freezer used to hide the bodies. Do you see anything? Xiao Bao looked at Lin Feng and asked. Officer Lin frowned, arms crossed, and tilted his head. After a while, he said, It seems too tidy? Yes, tidy. Xiao Bao nodded. Although no one has lived here for a long time and most of the places are dusty, everything here is very tidy. Even the stacked bowls in the cupboard are placed in the same direction. Look, this is Wang Liang's house, this is Wu Rong's house, they are all placed like this, right? That's true. Lin Feng opened his mouth. Xiao Bao said, Yes, Wang Liang and Wu Rong have different personalities, but why do their houses look so similar? You mean, this is all done by the murderer? Lin Feng rubbed his brows. Isn't this mysophobia too serious? OCD? I don't know about this. Xiao Bao shrugged, but it's useless to know the murderer's personality. Now it seems that you can't even find a suspect? Sigh. Lin Feng sighed dejectedly. It seems that there is a mysterious force controlling everything in the dark. Yo, Brother Feng, so you are also a kindred spirit? It seems that I'm not alone. Lin Feng's phone suddenly rang. Okay, I know, I'll take someone to check it out right now. Xiao Bao asked curiously, What's wrong, Sir Ma's soul-chasing phone? Lin Feng shook his head. No, someone reported a suicide by hanging. I have to go and check the situation. I guess you will be notified soon. Seeing Lin Feng walk out in a hurry, Xiao Bao clapped his hands and opened them, asking, Can I still fight the boss today? Today's harvest is good. On the street, the master and the servant walked slowly. Even now, Boss Luo's habit of going to the supermarket for discounts hadn't changed. But when they passed by an alley, Luoqiu and the servant girl stopped at the same time. They looked inside. In the middle of the dark alley, there was an inconspicuous billboard. The light on the billboard was only faintly lit. It said, Curse the Haunted House. Chapter 1201. The victim's name is Hai Dague. He was in the construction material business and had some assets. He had a wife and a daughter, but they were divorced. The daughter was given to the wife. The body was found around 10:30 a.m. The person who found the body was an hourly worker hired by the victim's family. The security guard in the residential area said that the victim came back at 11 o'clock p.m. last night and didn't go out after that. The surveillance video showed that no one had been here. The doors and windows were all closed. However, when Lin Feng arrived at the scene with his men, the people who had arrived earlier had already collected a lot of information. Lin Feng immediately led his men to walk around the victim's house carefully, but they didn't find any clues. The victim had been hanged. However, the forensic doctor hadn't arrived yet, so the body wasn't taken down for the time being. The police who had arrived earlier had limited tools, and they were also afraid that they would destroy useful information, so they just hung the body up. There aren't any useful clues. It seems that we can only wait for the forensic doctor to examine it carefully, Lin Feng thought to himself. Sure enough, not long after, Lin Feng heard Xiao Bao's voice coming from outside the door. However, when he turned around, the first person he saw wasn't Xiao Bao, but a cold-looking woman who was about 27 or 28 years old with short hair. The first impression Lin Feng had of this woman was that she was cold. Then, he felt that she was capable and experienced. Then, she had a good figure and an above-average face. Coupled with her unique temperament, it was actually a bonus. Even so, she still made people stay away from her. Medical Examiner Nan, the new medical examiner, was the person who had replaced Section Chief Qin. When Medical Examiner Nan arrived, Director Liu led her to greet the main people in charge of each department. He heard that she had graduated from the same school as Section Chief Qin, but was a few years behind. She was old Qin's junior sister. It was natural to greet each other when they met. Lin Feng greeted her naturally. Medical Examiner Nan nodded. After asking about the situation, she started to work directly. Xiao Bao, on the other hand, was busy with his work. Perhaps he was scolded by his new boss because he didn't come earlier? The whole process was carried out in silence. When Lin Feng focused most of his attention on the black silk stockings worn by Medical Examiner Nan, she had already finished her work temporarily. The preliminary diagnosis is suicide. Suicide, yes. Suicide? Lin Feng, who finally woke up from his daydream of those beautiful legs, was startled. How do you judge? This is just a preliminary judgment, not the final result. Dr. Nan began to take off the rubber gloves on his hand. There are no signs of a struggle at the scene of death. Other than the constriction on the victim's neck, there are no obvious fatal injuries, but, just when Dr. Nan was about to explain his preliminary judgment, a police officer suddenly rushed over. Officer Lin, we found it. The victim really committed suicide. Lin Feng was taken aback. As for Dr. Nan, he frowned. Clearly, he did not like to be interrupted. What did you find? Lin Feng was curious. The police officer hurriedly took out a laptop, which was placed on the coffee table. When they entered the room, the laptop's screen was facing the deceased, but it had run out of battery and shut down automatically. The technician plugged it in and spent some time to crack the password before turning it on. I'm guilty, the man in the video said a lot of things in front of the camera, from how he started his business by doing bad things to what he had done over the years. At last, the man started his own action. He walked to the stool, hung the rope, and kicked the stool away. The man hung himself, and then began to struggle instinctively. Soon, he stopped moving and died. And this man was the deceased, Hai Dague. I'll go back first. The new Dr. Nan said directly after the video, and then left with Xiao Bao, leaving Lin Feng and the others in a daze. Officer Lin, what should we do next? Lin Feng thought for a while. Continue the investigation, and then write a report. If there's nothing else, we'll close the case and issue a death certificate. Let the family come to collect the body. Oh, okay. Yes, we didn't find it before. The servant girl looked around. Maybe it's because of the absence of the shop. That was probably the case. Luoqiu nodded. Although one's consciousness could radiate outwards and observe the entire place at all times and record everything, no matter how big or small, no one was interested in watching the development of everything all the time. At most, they would pay attention to some important areas and observe carefully. Except for some guests, Luoqiu didn't pay attention to many things. Master, do you want to go in and have a look? The servant girl asked softly. Luoqiu thought for a while, and nodded since there was nothing special to do. When he walked into the alley, he seemed to pass through some invisible thin film, which seemed to be some means of vigilance and selection. There was a 5-step staircase in front of the shop. It was in a place similar to the basement. It was a very small doorway, only about 60 centimeters wide. The light pipe was on, but it was the kind of light pipe that was about to die. The white light was dim, like gray. After opening the door, they still needed to go down a few more steps. The overall space was not large, only a dozen square meters, which was at most the size of a bedroom. There were not many things in the room. There was a particularly large and exaggerated desk, an old sofa, and then a room full of cabinets, which occupied 3 walls, and a small room, which should be the bathroom. There were many books on the cabinets that occupied almost all the walls. Almost all of them were books, with only a few decorations. One of the decorations was a crystal skull, which aroused Luocchio's curiosity. Because Luocchio remembered that he had such a crystal skull, but that was a long time ago. Now this skull was placed in the storeroom. It was one of the few things that Luocchio collected in the storeroom after he became the boss. A person was lying on the sofa, covering his face with a book, so his face could not be seen clearly. But the birdcage on the large desk attracted his attention, because it was a crow that was locked up here. At this time, the crow suddenly cried, flapping its wings, making a noisy sound, and it said, "Idiot 24, get up, idiot 24, get up." Like a parrot, the crow in the cage kept crying, and its voice was harsh. The person lying on the sofa grabbed the thick book that covered his face and threw it out, which hit the cage directly. The cage was also amazing, it did not fall down and seemed to be fixed on the table. The crow immediately stopped crying, folded its wings, and only stared at the cage with its eyes. "Sorry. This guy needs to be trained since childhood." On the sofa, the person lying on the sofa sat up lazily, yawning. His messy curly hair almost covered his eyes, but the visible bags under his eyes were covered with a layer of gray. He looked like a patient with deep blindness. He was young, about 25 or 26 years old. The young man stood up like a sleepy person, yawning again, and then walked to the table with his back hunched. He sat down and said, "Please sit down." Although the young man looked sloppy, the small basement was unusually clean, and everything was placed neatly. Even the thick book that the young man had just thrown out, after hitting the cage, automatically flew back to the wall cabinet. The servant girl pulled out the chair in front of the table for her master to sit down. At this time, the mysterious young man slightly opened his eyes, and then a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes, and then he said in surprise, "Alchemy puppet? What a delicate work! I didn't expect there to be such advanced technology here." Hearing this, the servant girl slightly frowned, but she didn't say anything, because Luocchio was here. Her master was also looking at this mysterious young man. At the same time, the servant girl was more and more amazed. She was very clear about what this mysterious young man was trying to pry. If it was in the past, this kind of prying would have brought great fear to this mysterious young man. Shinryu of Kelowna had tried to pry several times, and then he was sealed as a child, and lived through a difficult period. Since this young man was fine, it naturally meant that her master had grown to the point where he could restrict the automatic operation of the club. However, this mysterious young man was able to see through the layer of illusion that she had put up. "Hello." Luocchio greeted first. "Hello." The mysterious young man also nodded, and his sleepy appearance seemed to have woken up a little, and his sitting posture was also a little better. "You two don't have anything to do here, right?" He didn't care about the calmness of this man and the alchemy puppet. After all, they were obviously the type with power, and obviously wouldn't be surprised by the abnormality here, or in other words, they would be frightened by the supernatural power here. Luocchio smiled. "We just passed by and came in to have a look out of curiosity. The House of Curses, may I ask what this place does?" The young man was very direct, just like the name of this house you saw. Curses, to kill people with curses. Of course, this place accepts curses from customers. Luocchio nodded. "Then, how much is the fee?" The young man smiled. "It depends on the situation, and also the target of the curse. If the target of the curse is more difficult, the fee will naturally be higher. If the fee is too high, even if a name is exchanged for a life, I may not accept it. It also depends on my mood. Luocio thought for a while and asked curiously, "Is it just a curse?" The young man shrugged and said, "It can also make people unlucky, such as tripping when walking, choking when eating, suddenly falling sick, often having nightmares, suddenly withering or directly unable to lift up when doing things, and relatively, it's very cheap." "How's the business?" Luocio asked again. The young man was stunned but also answered, "It's just opened, it's still quiet for now, but there are already a few customers." Luocio nodded, then stood up and smiled. "Sorry to bother you, I'll visit again if I have the chance, Mr. 24. Okay. The young man nodded subconsciously. After that, Luocio walked up the stairs, and as for the servant girl, she pushed the chair back to its original place. This action naturally made the young man feel very comfortable, but the servant girl's following gaze made the young man shudder. Knowing that the two had left, the young man frowned. Damn it! How can there be such a powerful alchemy puppet in this subworld? An immortal puppet? And this man, compared to the original body, is he immortal? Supreme? He couldn't help but ponder. Now he was very weak, not even 1/10,000th of the original body. And it was just an accident that he came here. Everything was because more than 2 months ago, a space-time disorder caused a crack to appear in this subworld, and he, who was exploring in the endless space-time, released a thought out of curiosity and entered this subworld through the crack. But unexpectedly, the crack was directly fixed in a short time, which caused the connection between him and the original body to be directly cut off, and a trace of his consciousness could only stay here. The original body might not care about the disappearance of this trace of consciousness, but as a trace of consciousness trapped in this subworld, he didn't want to hide like a turtle until it was obliterated or even swallowed. Yes, it would be swallowed, because at the moment when this subworld suddenly had a space-time disorder, in addition to him, there were several different strong consciousnesses, who also split their consciousnesses to explore this subworld. He was afraid that the others were like him. Because the crack was repaired too quickly, the split consciousnesses were trapped here. If they reached the level of immortality like his original body, they would naturally understand what benefits they could get if they could swallow the other party's consciousness. Moreover, without the recognition of this subworld's consciousness, he was like an unregistered resident of spacetime and needed to be careful, but if he kept curling up, it was not a solution. So, he began to do his old business again, doing the business many years ago, when he was just a weak conjurer. Thinking of this, the young man rubbed his chin. Speaking of which, this subworld is really interesting. The concentration of elements here has suddenly increased, and it's still increasing. It's almost catching up with that half-demon subworld that we've explored before. At this time, the young man 24 suddenly felt the table shake slightly. He opened the drawer under the table, took out a mobile phone, glanced at it and smiled. Oh, there's a business. It's best to never wake up? What the hell, such a low-level request. Forget it, even mosquitoes have meat. Immortal life? On the way back, Luocio stopped. This was Miss Maid's opinion. Yes, there's eternity above immortality. But it's not really eternity, at best it can only be regarded as pseudo-eternity. Even eternity has its strong and weak. For example, the one in heaven can be regarded as the top pseudo-eternity, also known as the threshold one. Miss Maid nodded. Of course, this is just a name for the life that transcends the subworld's consciousness in some subworlds, generally popular in the subworlds dominated by magic. For example, the immortals that once appeared in this subworld where Master is now are also the same. Magic. Luocio nodded. For the boss, the most intuitive impression of magic was a boy with glasses with lightning on his forehead in a movie. Miss Maid said again, although it's very weak, the owner of this haunted house has a trace of incongruity, so he shouldn't belong to this subworld. This is a bit strange. Generally speaking, even between the two subworlds that are relatively adjacent, there is a very difficult to break defense. Just like the transcendence, although it's possible to travel between different subworlds through the dimensional crevice, the transcendence will generally be infected with a trace of the unique aura of the dimensional crevice. It's a kind of mark of the dimensional crevice's origin. But the owner of this haunted house doesn't have it, so he should have come here through some means, and he just came here not long ago. Basically, it's very close to the truth. Yuye's speculation. Luoqiu nodded. He really didn't intend to waste time on this investigation, so he directly bought the information. After reading the information, the origin of the young man became clear.